I'm writing this because I need it out of my head. If you're local to El Paso, you've probably heard the story already. The marble angel at Evergreen Cemetery that cries at midnight. People talk about it like it's one of those urban legends you tell on a long drive down I-10, something to keep you awake on the straight dark stretch between the Franklin Mountains and the river. I used to treat it the same way until last spring. Now I won't drive past the iron fence after dark. I take the long way home, even if it means hitting every red light on Montana. At the time, I was working delivery for a parts warehouse off Gateway East, running orders to auto shops and scrapyards. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept the rent paid. My cousin Javi rode with me sometimes when his construction jobs were slow. Javi's the kind of guy who jokes through anything. Flat tires, summer heat, cops pulling us over for nothing, laughing, like he knows some secret the rest of us don't. He's taller than me, thicker in the shoulders, and it makes people assume he's fearless. He's not. He's just good at pretending. The other player in this is Manny. He's a year older than me, and we went to high school together. He'd been doing groundskeeping at Evergreen for a few months. He liked it, or he said he did. He liked the quiet. He said the dead had better manners than the living. He sent me photos sometimes on his lunch break, sunlight on rows of white markers, the Franklin Ridge hazy in the distance, a coyote trotting along the fence pretending not to look at him. Manny took good pictures. A few days before all this, he texted me a picture of a statue, an angel facing slightly left, the wings cracked where they joined the shoulders, streaks of soot or dust in the folds of the marble robes. He wrote, "This one's weird. People leave flowers like it's a shrine. Yesterday someone left a baby sock." I wrote back, "You keeping it?" He sent the eye roll emoji and then, "Nah, dude, not taking stuff from graves." The night everything kicked off, we'd finished a late drop at a shop on Alameda. It was warm even after dark, that dry warmth that feels baked into the sidewalks all day. I was ready to call it and go home, but Javi was wired from too much gas station coffee. He said, "Let's swing by Manny's. He's off in an hour, right? We can mess with him, tell him we saw someone hop the fence." I said we weren't doing that. Manny hated when folks joked about trespassing. He took the job seriously, but 10 minutes later we were rolling past the black iron entrance on Stevens. The closed sign hung crooked and the driveway lights set off a soft yellow glow up the lane. There's a way the night sounds different in a cemetery. I don't mean supernatural. I mean the lack of traffic, the way the trees and stones block the wind and sound like they absorb it. When we pulled into the lot, I killed the engine and we sat for a second. The kind of quiet that makes you aware of your own breathing. A flashlight beam cut across the grass ahead and we heard Manny locking the low-maintenance shed. He was walking toward the office when he heard us and turned, already shaking his head. "No visitors," he called, smiling anyway. "You two don't get enough of me when I'm off?" "We brought snacks," Javi said, holding up a bag of chips. "Payment for ghost stories." Manny walked up, took the bag, and glanced over, his shoulder toward the rows of graves. "I hate when you say ghost stories out loud in here. You were the one who sent the angel," I said. "The one with the broken wings." "Half broken," he said automatically. "Don't disrespect her." He said it joking, but he lowered his voice. That got my attention. Manny doesn't spook easy either. He told us they call that statue the Weeping Woman and no one knows which family commissioned it. The name on the base had eroded until it was basically nothing. People leave candles and toys and sometimes notes stuck into the seams of the marble. "At closing," he said, "you clean up the trash. That's the rule. Except for her. The supervisor told me day one, don't touch the offerings. If something falls, you can set it back. That's it." "Why?" Javi asked. Manny shrugged and didn't answer. He didn't need to. You could feel the reason in the heavy quiet, the way the dark seemed to lean in when he said it. We were still talking by the office when it happened. It was small at first, a sound that's easy to mistake for something else. I thought it was the wind changing or a dog crying on a back porch across the street. Manny went still. The sound came again, thin and distant, rising and falling. Not a coyote, not a bird. It sounded like a woman trying not to cry, not trying hard enough. Javi laughed, because that's what you do when you want to keep the dark. from pressing all the way in. "You got speakers out there to sell the tourist legend?" "Shut up," Manny said, and we obeyed. He didn't move for maybe 20 seconds. Then he said, "Come on," and started toward the graves. We didn't have flashlights except Manny's, so we walked in a cone of yellow down the center lane. The ground is uneven in places, and my ankle twisted once. I swore under my breath, and Javi bumped my shoulder. The crying came and went like the sound drifted on currents we couldn't feel. We passed a cluster of low markers, a bench with a name sandblasted into it, a bronze vase with fake flowers turned gray in the moonlight. A rabbit darted. Close up, the smell of cut grass was strong, sweet like hay. Manny stopped, lifted the light, and there she was. She's not as big as I expected. Maybe 5 feet from base to halo. The wings are cracked like he said. The right one chipped along the edge like something took a bite. The face is soft. Not pretty in the Disney way, but kind in a way that hurts. The eyes are tilted down like she's reading the base, and the hands are cupped as if she's holding water. There was water there. At least that's what I thought until we got closer. The hands glistened. The cheeks did too. Manny lifted the beam and we saw a thin line shining down from the inner corner of the left eye, running along the nose. It was slow, and it was steady. "And it made my scalp feel too tight," Javi said under his breath. "That's a trick. Someone's up in that tree with a bottle." Manny swung the light into the branches. Nothing. The leaves rattled a little. Nothing more. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe the nervous joke echoing in my head. Maybe the warm smell that didn't belong to the night. I reached up and touched my fingers to the wetness on the statue's cheek. It felt warm. Not hot, not room temperature. Warm like someone's breath against your palm on a cold morning. When I pulled my hand back, the tips of my fingers were slick and I smelled copper. I wiped my fingers on my jeans and immediately wished I hadn't. I can still see the faint shadow there like a greasy handprint that never washes out all the way. Javi didn't touch it. He put his hands behind his back and leaned in and said, "Maybe there's iron in the pipes." "There are no pipes," Manny said. Something fell behind us. A thump and skitter like a pebble kicked. We all turned fast, and Manny's light jerked across the stones. Nothing moved. When the beam came back, the angel's cupped hands looked slightly fuller. Javi swore quietly and stepped back. Manny lowered the light. "It started 2 weeks ago," he said. I never heard crying. I just saw the shine on her face when I did my last pass, and I figured but it wasn't anywhere else. I reached out and he held up his hand like he'd burned it once and never got over the surprise. "Same as you, warm." "You tell your supervisor?" I asked. He nodded. He said it happened some years and not others. He said keep the gate locked and don't invite idiots to come look. He said if I see anybody trying to take anything, call the police. "Take what?" Javi asked. "The offerings," Manny said, and motioned with his head. At the base of the statue on the little marble ledge were things people had left. A toy truck with chipped paint, a white ribbon tied in a bow, a wilting carnation, a small folded paper that might have been a letter. We stood there longer than I realized because when Manny checked his watch, he hissed and said he needed to finish locking up. As we walked back to the office, the faint crying followed and then faded. Javi was quiet for once, chewing his lip. When we reached the lot, Manny turned hard on me like he'd made up his mind to say something. "Don't come back," he said. "Not after hours." "We won't," I said. "I'm serious," he said. It feels like noticing her is asking for something back. I don't know how to explain it, just don't. We promised because it felt like the right thing to say. We meant it for maybe a day. The next evening, Javi texted me a picture of baby, powder and painter's tape. He said, "Science experiment." He wanted to go back and dust the base to see if the tears left tracks. I told him absolutely not. He said we'd go before closing and leave before dark. We argued until he hit me where I'm weakest. We can prove it's condensation and then Manny can relax. I don't know why I needed Manny to relax. I think I wanted to take the wire out of his voice, the way he kept looking over his shoulder like he'd remember something he didn't want to say out loud. We got there well before closing, asked the woman at the office if we could visit the weeping woman, and she said not friendly at all. The cemetery's open until 7. People leave offerings. Don't touch them. Don't make a mess. We swore we wouldn't. We did anyway. When we found the statue, there was no shine on her face. The hands were dry. The sun was high enough that shadows were short. The marble felt cool when I touched the edge of the base. Javi crouched and laid down the painters. Tape at 4 spots like a compass. Sprinkled baby powder in small lines leading away from the base and dusted a thin ring around the ledge. He said, "If there's a leak or someone comes by to mess with it, we'll see footprints." "Footprints? Of who?" I asked. "Exactly," he said, like that was an argument won. I also stuck my old voice recorder in the bushes behind a stone. I used it to record lecture notes in community college years back, and I still had it in a drawer. I set it to voice activation so it would only record if there was sound. Then we sat on the bench across the lane and waited. Families came and went. A woman with a hat pulled low, a guy in a work shirt carrying a grocery bouquet, a kid dragging his feet and then sprinting 2 steps to catch up. The baby powder looked silly and out of place, like someone had drawn a chalk circle in a grocery store aisle. We left at 7 sharp, hating ourselves and loving the idea that we'd come back after midnight and prove whatever needed proving. We went for tacos, killed time, drove out to North Mesa and back, parked under the bridge near the river and watched the water look black as oil, listened to the low hum of crossing traffic. At 11:45, we were back at the gate. The lot was empty except for Manny's truck. He wasn't outside. We sat with the windows cracked and the engine off and the temperature gently falling. At 11:59, Javi clicked his phone side button like a detonator. At midnight, the crying started. It was closer this time. Not a sob, just the low broken sound someone makes when they're trying to fix their breathing and can't. We got out. I didn't want to. Neither did Javi. You could tell because he walked with his shoulders tight and his hands open like he wanted nothing to do with them. We didn't talk. The dark had the heavy feeling again, like water. We reached the statue and stopped. The powder ring looked untouched. The compass lines were perfect, sharp white against the gray stone road. I had a stupid hope then that nothing would happen and we could brush the powder away, apologize to the air and go home. The first tear slid in the light from my phone. Javi didn't say anything. He didn't have to. We watched it track slowly, down the left cheek, pause briefly at the edge of the upper lip, and drop. It hit the base with a tiny, audible pat. That's the part my brain keeps replaying in the middle of the night. The sound was too real, too ordinary, 1 drop hitting stone. It shouldn't have been possible to hear it at that distance, but it felt like the sound happened inside my chest. "Okay," Javi said softly. "Okay. Maybe not a prank." "Don't touch it," I said, like he needed me to say it. He wasn't reaching. He kept his hands jammed in his pockets. We waited for more drops. They came. 4 slow. Even tears fell into the angel's cupped hands. I can't explain it in a way that makes sense. The night around us felt warmer, the way a car feels when someone else breathes inside it for a while. The copper smell was stronger, and something new. A faint melody. There weren't words, not that I could make out. It was a lullaby in the feeling of it. I recognized it without recognizing it, the way you recognize the sound of your own mother in a crowded store before you see her face. Javi made a sound then, a little gasp. I looked at him and found him staring past the statue at a small headstone to the right. His face had lost all the smartass. He was just a guy looking at something that hurt. I followed his eyes. The stone was small, white, the name worn to almost nothing, just an M and a smear of letters. A date with the 1918 still clear. There was a toy truck placed in front of it. The same truck from last night. Someone had moved it. "That wasn't there," I said. Javi swallowed. "The powder," he said. I looked down and froze. All around the base of the statue, the ring of baby powder was smooth, but there were marks in the compass lines we'd laid out. Tiny half-moons, like the front half of a small bare foot, had pressed into the powder and lifted off. They led away from the statue and ended right at the small marker. The last half-moon sat perfect at the bottom edge. You did that, I said, not because I believed it, but because saying it out loud made the night feel less like it was unfolding without us. Javi shook his head hard enough to be angry and backed up a step. We both heard someone moving then, coming quick from the lane behind us. Manny. He was out of breath, and he looked like he'd run the whole length of the place. He saw the powder, saw our faces, and didn't yell, which I'd expected. He said, "I told you," and bent over, hands on knees, breathing like a panicked runner. She doesn't like attention, she doesn't. You heard it? Javi asked. I hear it every night, Manny said. He straightened up and scrubbed, a hand over his face. His palm left a shine across his forehead like sweat. I can't sleep. It's like it keeps going in my head when I close my eyes. I brought something back. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small wrapped in a hank of blue shop towel. He opened it carefully in his palm to show us. It was a chip of marble. What is that? I asked, though I already knew. I found it in the grass. A week ago, he said. I thought it was just a broken piece. I put it in my pocket to show my supervisor in the morning, and that night was the first night I heard her. I tried to put it back the next day, but it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit anywhere. Throw it away, Javi said. Manny shook his head. I think she's crying because people keep taking little pieces, not just me. Flowers, notes, a baby sock, a stone, a chip. Like the whole place is being picked at, I think. I don't know what I think. I just want to return what I took. He stepped toward the statue and lifted the chip. The crying grew louder. The lullaby sound went darker, like a melody played too slow. The copper smell ticked over, into something that reminded me of a jar of pennies you'd opened and pressed your nose into as a kid. I backed up one more step and almost tripped on the little marker with the M. Careful, Javi said, and reached out as if to steady me. His hand brushed the angel's fingers. He jerked like he touched a stove and held his hand to his chest. It's hot, he whispered. It's burning. Give it to me, Manny said. He set the chip against the curve where the wing met the shoulder. It didn't match. It hung there for a second like a tooth jarred loose, and then the crying dropped to a whisper and the chip slid down and landed in the angel's cupped hands. The sound of that little drop might be the worst part. It made my stomach turn, something so delicate and helpless in a place full of stone. The flashlight went out, not dimmed. Went out like a switch flipped. For a few seconds there was nothing, but the clouded moonlight and the darker suggestion of trees. The lullaby turned to just breath, not mine, not Javi's. Long, slow breaths like someone asleep and not resting well. I fumbled my phone and the screen lit my face and nothing else. Javi swore and it came out thin. Manny said a prayer in Spanish, a real one, not movie words, the kind you learn as a kid at a kitchen table. I didn't see her move. I didn't. The statue is a statue, and I'll fight anyone who says I'm claiming otherwise. But when Manny's flashlight sputtered back to life and the beam jumped across stone, the chip was no longer in the angel's hands. It was gone. Javi held his palm out and there was a smear on it like old rust that wouldn't wipe away. He swiped it on his shirt and it didn't leave. He looked scared in a way I've never seen. Small scared, child scared. We all looked down. The baby powder ring around the base was gone, like it had sucked into the stone. The compass marks were blown into soft fans, as if someone had walked through them, and then a breeze had come. At the little marker with the M, the toy truck, was turned slightly toward the statue. I'll regret writing this, but that's how it looked, like it had been angled to pay attention. None of us talked on the walk back to the office. Manny locked the gate with quick jerks like his hands had remembered how to do it and didn't want his brain involved anymore. At the truck, he said, I'm quitting. He wasn't looking at us. He was looking at the black beyond the fence, and I knew he meant it. He didn't come back the next day. He texted me, told the boss I'm out. He didn't argue. I slept at Javi's that night because neither of us wanted to be alone. He ran water over his hand and scrubbed, and it did nothing. The next morning, the smear had faded to almost nothing, and he tried to make jokes about cheap baby powder and dusty statues. He didn't joke about the crying. For a week, We did our best to forget it. We took longer routes that didn't put us near the cemetery. When we drove past anyway by accident, we turned the radio up high. At night, when I was trying to sleep, I'd sometimes hear the far-off sound of a woman trying not to cry. It would drift up in the gaps between traffic and the fridge kicking on, and I'd tell myself it was a bark from a dog that sounded like something else. I didn't tell Javi that part. He didn't tell me anything either. On the 8th night, my old recorder in the drawer started playing on its own. Not loud, just a little click and then a hiss. I got up, opened the drawer, and watched the tiny LED blink like a tired eye. I had to actually push the stop button for it to quit. In the morning, I tried to write it off as a battery issue. Then I found out the batteries were dead when I went to check. I charged it and plugged it into my laptop and opened the file from that night at the cemetery. Most of it was static. 2 minutes in, you could hear our footsteps and the stupid crunch of baby powder, Javi muttering, "Compass, dude," and me telling him to hurry. Then we left for tacos. There's 6 hours of nothing. At 12:02 a.m., the recorder clicks on. There's breathing. 3 different rhythms, all human. Mine, Javi's, Manny's. And under that, the sound of a woman humming. Not words, not a song I recognized in a way I could hum back. But I knew it. Every bone in me knew it. I listened to that part once. I won't listen again. I deleted the file. Then I emptied the trash. Then I took the recorder out to the big metal dumpster behind our building and threw it as far as I could into the middle where no one could reach. It thumped and slid and fell quiet. At 12:08 a.m. the next night, my phone rang. Unknown number. Local area code. I let it go to voicemail. No message left. At 12:09 it rang again. Same number. I answered and said hello and heard breathing. Not prank breathing either. Not some kid huffing like a creep. Slow, patient, tired. I hung up. The number never worked when I tried to call back. The next night, it rang at 12:08 again. I turned my phone off. It turned itself on. I'm not saying it did it by itself like in a horror movie. I must have bumped the button in my sleep. That's the version I tell myself to keep my heart from breaking. In my chest, Javi lasted 1 more week before he went back. He didn't tell me he was going. He left a little rubber ball that used to belong to his sister who died when we were 9. I didn't know he still had that. He said later he put it on the base and said thank you, and sorry both. He said the statue's face looked different in daylight. Less sad, more like a teacher who knows the answer and is waiting for you to figure it out. He said when he turned to go he felt someone take his hand for a second. Warm, real. And when he looked, no one was there. I went the day after that because I didn't want him to be the only one haunted by whatever we'd done. I went during the day. I brought nothing. I touched nothing. I stood 5 feet back and said, because I didn't know what else to say, "I'm not taking anything. I'm sorry we made a mess. I'm sorry for touching your face." There was no sound, of course. Just the breeze, the tire noise from across the way, the far-off call of a train. I started to turn and felt something cold hit my wrist. A drop. I didn't look up to see if it fell from the angel's hand or a tree, or if a bird had flown by and done what birds do. I looked at my sleeve. A round spot darkened the fabric and left a faint rim when it dried, a pale rust color in a ring like a coffee cup set down and picked up again. That stain hasn't washed out. It's not loud. Only I can see it when I look for it. That's almost worse. We tried to go on. Manny got a job at a landscaping company in Las Cruces and moved in with his sister for a while to save money. He doesn't answer calls after dark. Javi went to a job in Fabens and stayed late and told me later he saw a kid's bare footprints in the dust of the job site trailer, and nobody had brought their kids to work and there was no sign of prints outside. He laughed telling me and then didn't laugh when he realized he was laughing. I changed my route home to avoid Evergreen completely. People still talk about the weeping woman. I hear it at the burrito place and in line at the register at the hardware store. I heard a woman tell her friend she took her grandchildren to see the statue and one of the kids whispered to the air and said, "Shh, Mama's sleeping." And nobody in their family uses the word mama. Teenagers dare each other To climb the fence. They won't tell that part to the guy at the office when he catches them. They tell it to each other. Voice dropped low. On a sidewalk under a streetlight, smoking mint vapes and practicing being adults. If you're reading this because you want to go see it, I can't stop you. I'm not even going to say don't. That never stopped anyone. If you go, go in the day. Don't make a mess, don't take anything, don't wipe the tears if you see them. I think that matters. I think you get marked when you do. Not cursed exactly. Marked like a folded corner in a book. Sometimes, when the wind is wrong, I can hear her from my apartment. It's not every night. It's not dramatic. It's not a scream. It's that soft, tired crying that keeps itself small because it doesn't want to wake anyone up. I keep the radio on low and pretend I'm listening to a late game or a traffic report for a city I don't live in. I do not answer. Unknown numbers after midnight. I don't keep baby powder in the house. The stain on my sleeve fades and comes back with the weather. Manny texted me last week to ask if the crying ever stopped. I didn't lie. I said no, but it gets easier to live around. He said okay, and then sent me a picture he'd taken from the bus on his way to work. The sky was pink. The mountains looked close enough to touch. A little kid in the front seat had fallen asleep and was leaning on his mother's arm, mouth open, hair stuck to his forehead. There are worse things to carry, he wrote. I don't know if that's true. I know this. On the nights when I give in and drive the long way home down Montana, when the moon's up and the sidewalks look blue, I keep my eyes on the road, past where the iron fence waits. And I listen for breathing that isn't mine, slow and patient and tired, and a melody I'm afraid to learn. If you go, and you will, someone always does. Don't bring baby powder. Don't bring a camera. Bring something you can leave behind without missing it. And when you turn to go, walk steady. Don't run. Running makes the night follow you home. I don't know if this will make me sound guilty or crazy. Maybe both. I've kept quiet for a long time because I didn't want to be the guy who turned a friend into a ghost story. But if you've heard the rumor about the notebook found under a hedge in Highgate Cemetery, the one with the last line that looks like it's written in ink and something else, I was there the night he wrote it. And I think I know why it was the only thing that came back. This was a few years ago when I was at uni in London. I lived in Archway with two friends, Maya, who did photography, and Ben, who studied history and knew 101 ways people got buried wrong in the Victorian era. Our circle at school included Elliot, who was that guy everyone knows, the one who dares people to do things while also making it feel like an assignment. He wasn't mean, just always collecting experiences like he was trying to be a real person. Before he graduated and got absorbed into a job in a flat and a loop, Elliot pitched Highgate like it was an experiment. Not the tourist bit, he said, waving off the iconic stone angels, the Egyptian Avenue, all that. The paupers section, the unclaimed. They put them in trenches sometimes. Check the records. No one visits them. That's where the air is least disturbed. He wanted us to spend a night there, not the four of us. He volunteered himself. You can stay till closing and walk out with the crowd, he said. I'll hide and stay in the paupers field. You lot come back around 3 and film my face. See if I've gone mad from foxes and damp. He was half joking. He had a sleeping bag, a headlamp, a notebook with a rubber band around it, and a recorder app ready to go. Ben hated the idea because he hated conflict, and getting told off by a caretaker counted as conflict. Maya liked the mood of it. Fog, she said. If we get fog, it'll be magic. I said I didn't believe in ghosts, but I did believe in uneven ground and slime on the steps and the way old iron can slice you if you grab it wrong. We weren't going to camp. Elliot was. We were only going to walk in after midnight, poke him with a kebab skewer, and walk him out for chips. The day we chose was in late autumn, one of those weeks when London feels tired of itself. The afternoons die fast and the streetlights come on early and everything smells faintly of wet stone and buses. We met at the Starbucks near Highgate Tube and walked up Swains Lane, past Waterloo Park with its black pond and the benches, where the same men always seem to be smoking. The cemetery walls run along the lane like the edge of a cliff. The public side of Highgate closes at dusk, but we bought tickets anyway, because we wanted to look around in daylight and weren't complete idiots. We went in and played tourist for an hour. I've lived in London my whole life and I still get quiet around Highgate. The west side is the one with the famous stuff, but that day we stuck to the east because Elliot had done his research. The paupers section is there, towards the back where the names thin out and the grass gets rough. There's a particular kind of silence in cemeteries that isn't really silence. It's layers of noise turned down, traffic like a throat clearing, leaves rubbing against each other, a fox barking miles away and sounding like a dog getting pinched. We walked along a path with edging stones that weren't straight anymore. The ground rises and falls in humps where the coffins have collapsed. If you stand long enough, you can feel the faint give in the earth, which is one of those sensations your brain logs as bad idea without needing an explanation. We ran into a caretaker near the old chapels. He was locking up a side gate and he clocked our student energy immediately. He had the look of someone who has said the same warnings to the same faces for years. "We close at 4:30, he told us. "You don't want to be here after that. The foxes get cheeky and the ground's not safe past the path." "It doesn't really close," Elliot said. Amiable, the way you talk to bouncers when you know you're in the wrong but your hoping charm is a skeleton key. "It just goes quiet." "It closes," the caretaker said. "And the part back there," he jerked his chin towards the rear of the east side. "That's not for wandering. Mass graves, no one marked them properly. You think you're stepping on grass and you're stepping on a lid." "It's not haunted then?" Maya asked, because she's exactly the type of person who would ask a caretaker if his workplace is haunted. He didn't smile. "The people who come for ghosts are the ones who leave litter," he said. "The unmarked don't get flowers. Leave them alone, and they'll leave you alone." It would have been a perfectly good line to end our day on. We drifted towards the exit with everyone else as the light went flat. Right before we left, Elliot asked for a patch of ground again and we found it. A shallow rectangle bordered by low stones with no names, just a number carved into a peg at one end. The kind of place you wouldn't register if you weren't looking for it. The caretaker had said trenches. Ben whispered trenches and swallowed. We walked out with the crowd around 4:30. There was a moment at the gate when I almost said, "Okay, fine, it's closed, we did it. We saw some angels, let's go get a pint." But Elliot had that bright look he gets when he's made a plan, and the world hasn't yet proved it'll say no. He ducked back in at the first gap in the stream of people like a fish flicking back upstream. He didn't even look back to see if we'd noticed. We all did. We all pretended we didn't. We killed time. There's a pub down on Highgate Hill where we had pies and talked about normal things like deadlines and whether it's okay to drift apart from people you love if no one did anything wrong. Every now and then one of us would look at the time. The plan was to go back around 3 in the morning when even the foxes get bored. I told myself it would be funny. We'd find Elliot asleep, wake him, he'd pretend he wasn't scared. We'd walk out through Waterloo Park pretending not to be relieved. Around 11 the fog came in. It wasn't dramatic, just that gradual thickening where light gets a halo and the nearest lamp looks like it's breathing. Maya grinned like she'd won something. "This is going to look insane on video," she said. We paid and left and walked back. Not to the main gate, but to the bit of wall near the park where everyone knows there's a section you can climb if you're an idiot. We were idiots. If you want to judge me for what comes next, go ahead. We didn't bring any tools, no crowbars or ropes, because the point wasn't to break anything. It was just to step over a boundary for a few hours. We didn't want to be the kind of people who ruin old stones for the sake of a dare. We boosted Maya up first. She dropped into the dark with a soft grunt and then "it's fine," in that fake brave voice that makes you more nervous than if they had screamed. Ben went next, then me. My hands were cold by the time I jumped down and my palms smelled like wet metal. The cemetery at night isn't louder or quieter. It's just emptier of certain sounds. No tour guides, no gravelly laughter, no high heels. Trying to walk quietly. The foxes still move. The taxis still hum on the road. You can hear your own breath like it belongs to someone else. We kept to the path because that was one thing the caretaker said that I believed without question. My phone torch does this thing where it makes the fog look solid, like you're shining it into a wall of milk. We turned the lights off as much as we could and walked by feel, following the darker strip of path between lighter patches of grass. We found Elliot by whispering his name and listening back like sonar. Elliot? The fog made the graves look like islands. Elliot? We heard a soft click from the direction of the paupers section and followed it, step by careful step. He had made a little camp without making a camp. I mean, he hadn't pitched anything or set anything up that would be hard to hide if a torch beam swung our way. He had his sleeping bag rolled out between two stones, his backpack as a pillow, and his notebook on his chest with the elastic band snapped under his thumb. His headlamp was off. He was using his phone for light, dimmed down to the lowest setting, and he was turning it off and on like he was trying not to teach the dark anything useful. "You came," he said, like he was surprised. "Good." Maya crouched and started filming. Ben said, "We're idiots," and handed Elliot a bottle of water and a Twix like he was his mum and this was a school trip. I stood and looked past Elliot because I didn't want to look at him, looking at me. From where we were, you could see the silhouettes of the taller stones against the mist. Every now and then the fog moved in a way that suggested someone had just walked behind a tree, which is a normal fog thing and not a ghost thing, but your body doesn't know that at 3 a.m. Somewhere in the graves, something small scuttled. We all pretended not to jump. "What's your conclusion so far?" Maya asked, her voice too loud in that space. She lowered it without meaning to. "Do you feel insane yet?" Elliot smiled. "It's less quiet than you think," he said. He tapped the recorder app on his phone and put it close to his mouth. 3:36, fog, ground soft, heard tapping? Might have been a branch. Saw a fox. Fox looked like it was doing rounds. He clicked the phone off and then on again to write in the notebook. "The air feels thick," he added, not into the recorder, just to us. "Like the space has weight, like there are more things than space." "That's just London," Ben said. "We don't have room even for air. I think this is where people want me to say that something big happened. It didn't, at least not right away. It's weirder than that. It's a lot of little things that are normal until they all happen at once. First, the smell. It wasn't rot. It was clean. It was the smell of laundry soap that's half faded and ironed cotton, and the faint metallic breath of coins. That's a normal city smell if you're in a laundrette or on a bus next to someone in a uniform. But we were in grass and leaves, and it drifted past us in a square shape like it belonged to a person walking by. It came and it went without a footstep. Then the camera. Maya's battery was full when we left the pub. It was at 8% within 20 minutes. Then it climbed back up to 15 without being charged. That's not supernatural. That's cameras misreporting battery health. It happens, it still felt like a mood on purpose. Then the names. I don't know if you've ever noticed how many surnames repeat in old cemeteries. Of course they do. Families had plots. But the paupers section doesn't have family plots. It's trench burials. There were still repeated names on little, tilted stones in the grass, and when the fog thinned for a second, we saw them in a kind of rough line. May, not the same May, different first names. The kind of chance that makes you want to draw lines on a map to prove you're clever and doesn't actually prove anything. While we were looking, something more concrete happened. A sound, 3 knocks. Not loud, just solid, and spaced, like someone wanted you to hear the spacing. Knocks on wood. We all looked at each other. We all agreed without speaking not to say what we thought. And we all looked towards the ground because looking up into the fog felt like admitting something. "Trains," Ben whispered, and then realized we were nowhere near tracks that would make that noise, and then said, "Settling," like the earth had bones. I had this moment where I wanted to leave so badly that the only thing that kept me there was how embarrassed I'd be to say it. It wasn't fear of anything chasing me. It was fear of doing something rude, like talking over someone at a funeral we hadn't been invited to. Elliot was writing fast now. You could hear the scratch, and every so often he'd pause and look, just past our shoulders like he was reading over someone's face. Okay, Maya said, practical. We did it, we filmed your bravado. Let's go before we get caught by an actual person who charges actual fines. Give me 20 more minutes, Elliot said. He didn't say why 20. He didn't say what he expected to happen in that time. He sounded like a child at a park being given 5 more minutes on the swings, but he was the one asking. Just don't stand there. Walk, like you would if you were visiting. Come back. If I'm not here, I decided to be sensible. We looped. I hate that we did because it means we left him alone. We walked a rectangle around the path, slowly, pointing the torch down when the fog thinned and up when the fog grayed into a wall. We passed a stone angel whose face had gone soft with rain. We passed a holly hedge that made its own night. We passed a row of chest-high stones that listed in different directions like they were listening. Somewhere a dog barked twice hard, the way dogs do when they see a person where there shouldn't be a person. It was far away and then it felt near, and then nothing. When we got back to the paupers section, Elliot wasn't lying down anymore. He was sitting up, the notebook on his knees, the phone face down on his sleeping bag like he wanted to conserve every bar of charge for a moment he couldn't yet name. He looked past us again like someone taller had just stepped forward behind us and he wanted to make sure he couldn't see a face. Don't shine the light, he said, even though none of us were. Not an instruction, more like a habit he was trying to grow. What? I asked. They don't want it, he said. It's like they don't like being looked at. Who? Ben asked, and immediately regretted his own word. He said, I mean foxes. Foxes hate light. Yeah, Elliot said, and then he nodded at nothing. They hate it because it makes them one thing and they're only comfortable when they're a lot of things. Do you know what I mean? I didn't. I still don't. But I know the feeling he meant. That soft pressure of being watched by something that doesn't want to be anything as small as one set of eyes. It's a social anxiety that lives in the back of your neck. Maya crouched again, because that's what she does when she's trying to take up less space. We should go, she repeated. I'm not getting arrested because your concept of time turns into a poem when you're frightened. Go, Elliot said, so fast it hit me as relief. I'll catch you up. I need to finish a thought, so I don't take it with me. We did what he said. We left. I can argue with a lot of things, but not with the way he framed it. We walked the path again, slower, because the ground had decided to make lurching noises whenever we did anything, with speed. We reached the wall we had climbed and we waited there. The plan was to text him, "We're here," and to see his little light bob through the trees and to hear the scrape of his shoes and then to pull him up like mates in a slightly mean cartoon. I texted "Here." The little sending bar hung and then flipped to "Not delivered." The fog felt thicker near the wall, which makes no sense. The wall had flowers on the inside, winter pansies planted by someone with neat hands. I watched one twitch without wind and then decided maybe I had twitched. It was easier to blame me. 2 minutes, 5, 10. Ben said, "We should go back." And Maya said, "We never should have left." And I said nothing because both statements were true in an order that didn't help. We did go back. The path was the same path until it wasn't. That's not a ghost thing, that's Highgate at night. Paths that are obvious in daytime lean into the trees in fog. We lost the edge for half a minute and stepped onto soil that tried to eat my shoe in a giving way, like mattress foam. I hissed and hopped back like that would insult the ground into letting go. When we got to the paupers section, we all stopped without agreeing to. The sleeping bag was there. The backpack was there. The notebook was not on his knees. It wasn't on the sleeping bag. The phone had migrated to the ground where it lay face down, the recorder app still open, the waveform quietly vibrating when the fog brushed the microphone. Maybe he went for a piss, Maya said, practical again, and then pointed the torch away from the ground because neither of us wanted to accidentally see evidence of that. We called his name the way you do when you don't want anyone else to hear you calling it. He didn't say anything back. That would have been a kindness, and whatever was present that night didn't deal in those. What we got instead was movement at the edge of the hedges. Not inside them. Hedges don't really have inside. They have a kind of dark that slows your eye. But along them, like something walking parallel to us where the grass meets the shade. It sounded not like feet. I don't want to say it sounded like anything you'd put in a horror movie. It sounded like fabric brushing the tips of the grass. It sounded like coats. If you've ever been waiting at a zebra crossing and a group of office workers in long coats walks up behind you and you get that sweep swish of hem on trouser, it sounded like that. Just the ends of people moving, not their middle. "Elliot?" Ben said, and then, because he couldn't help himself, "Mate?" There was a pause, like someone polite deciding whether to answer. The fog pushed out a shape that wasn't a shape, more of a suggestion that something had gathered itself. I felt it rather than saw it. The way you feel someone tall stand a little too close in a queue and you register their height and their direction without meaning to. I turned my head after I felt it, and that was the mistake. And I hate how easy it is to describe now, because at the time it felt like walking off the edge of a map. There were people at the edge of the hedges. I can't see their faces when I think about it. I can't give you Victorian clothes or a jawline or a hat. I can tell you hands. I can tell you the way fingers are when people who don't want to be seen hold them together as if making fists will make them smaller. I can tell you sleeves that were not modern, or maybe they were and my brain filled in the rest. They stood not in a row, but in a way that suggested a row was natural to them. We had not been aware of them. We became aware, and I felt the kind of shame you feel when you realize you've been talking about someone in a room you thought was empty, and it wasn't. "Don't," Elliot's voice said from somewhere very near where we were not looking. "Don't look." We all turned, because we are the kind of animals who turn towards the voice we love. He was past the hedge line, kneeling maybe, or crouched or standing bent, in that area where the ground dips gently and then too much. He had the notebook in his hand and he was writing, his hand moving fast, and the pen made a sound, that scratch that is hard to mistake for anything else. The phone on the ground recorded. On the recording, which I've heard too many times, you can hear us breathing and you can hear the pen and you can hear, faintly, 3 knocks again, spaced like someone who has had to get people's attention for a long time and has developed a pace that works. "Come back," I said. I didn't shout because you don't shout in a place like that. "Elliot, come back." He kept writing, his voice came out without him stopping his hand. "They don't want the light and they don't want the words," he said. "But the words make them particular. If I don't write, they're air. If I do write, they're a thing. And if they're a thing, then they can be counted. Not remembered. That's different. Counted." "Elliot," Maya said, and her voice did a thing it never does. It shook. "Please." Something like a decision passed through whatever line of people stood by the hedge. It felt like rain deciding to start. I didn't look. This is the part I'm proud of, which is also pathetic, but I didn't look at them. I stared at Elliot's humming, ridiculous phone and at the sleeping bag and at the square of ground that had that cleaner smell again. The soap and coins, which I know now is probably the smell of a body washed by other hands and pennies on, eyes that may or may not be an actual thing. The smell passed clearly between me and the notebook. I reached for the notebook and then didn't because it wasn't mine, because I was suddenly sure that if I took it I would be taking something I didn't understand how to return. "Alex," Elliot said. He said my name like a fact. "They know I see them now." "I don't see anything," I lied. "Good," he said, "then leave." "I'm not leaving without you," I said. And that was a lie too. And we both heard it. There's a point at which fear goes weird and turns into the lightheadedness you get when you've climbed too many stairs. Ben put his hand on my sleeve. Very gently, not a pull, a contact, the way you touch someone sleepwalking. "We need to go," he said. "We can get someone. We can get that caretaker. He'll know how to talk like this." We left. I want a better reason to give you. I want to say we heard a siren or we saw a beam of light or the head shivered like a throat. None of that. We left because sometimes your body decides and your mind comes up with a reason later. We walked backwards without turning our backs, because that felt like a rule. We kept our phone torches pointed down because that felt like a rule too. There were footsteps behind us, but they were ours. There was the swish of coat hems, but maybe that was our jeans. I told myself a story, and I asked it to be true. At the wall, getting out felt suddenly like an exam. Maya went up first again. Ben laced his fingers and pushed me second, then scrambled after. I scraped my shin and didn't feel it until I was on the pavement, and it stung. The fog on Swains Lane looked like London fog, which is different from cemetery fog in a way I can't defend with science. We stood under a lamppost like that would put us in a different jurisdiction. We waited for Elliot to text or to appear as a shape and then as a person. He didn't. We argued for 5 minutes that will ruin my sleep forever. We did that human thing where you say 10 more minutes because scaffolding the night into blocks you can handle is the only way to get through it. At the end of those 10 minutes, we did the other human thing and we called 999 because that felt like the next block. The police did not appear with torches and dogs. It wasn't that kind of call for them. It was 2 young constables the next morning at a polite hour because we weren't reporting a crime yet, just a worry. By then we had gone home and come back like we were keeping watch outside a hospital. The constables took statements with professional calm. Like we'd said, our friend had gone for a long walk and might be hungover. They told us a caretaker had already checked and found no one and that they'd look again and that we should go home and rest because tired brains are bad at clocks. I wanted to scream. I said thank you instead. Days passed. I won't describe them. They were mostly made of phone calls and sitting on steps and that weird guilt that feels like acid reflux. The one where you can't keep food down but you still eat because your body insists on being alive. Elliot's parents came down from Newcastle. I met his mother, who said love in a way that made me overdue in 12. The official word was missing person. Posters went up. Maya printed them in 3 sizes and put them at eye level for children and adults and the level you look at when you're tired and your chin points at the ground. Ben stopped going to lectures and learned how to be very polite to very busy people on the phone. Weeks later, a gardener found a notebook under a holly hedge in Highgate Cemetery. He turned it into the office turned it into the police. The police took it to whoever handles things like evidence and stories, and because we were the ones who had called first, a detective, older, quiet in a way that made you quieter, let us read it. He did it in a room with a blue carpet and a fan that clicked. He gave us the look people give you when they're being kind and also covering themselves. I'm not going to summarize the whole notebook here. I don't think I'm allowed. A lot of it is what you'd expect. Dates, times, notes about foxes, a list of names from broken stones, a paragraph about how quiet has different flavors here. There are drawings, not good ones, just quick marks of a hedge line and where the ground slumps. Towards the end, the writing goes fast, the lines shorter like he couldn't lift his wrist all the way, and the ink, well, the ink looks darker in places. The last line is exactly what you've heard. He wrote in a hand that looks like it was moving and standing still all at once. They know I see them now. They don't want to be seen. The detective let us keep a photocopy of that page. He should not have, probably. Maybe he thought it would make us feel like we had something to hold. Elliot's body was never found. Searchers went through the cemetery careful as surgeons and nothing. The CCTV near the gate was grainy and showed the usual. Kids climbing where they shouldn't, foxes being absolute menaces, one person walking along the outside pavement at 3 a.m, who could have been anyone in a hoodie, including me. The official story settled into one of those shapes that make sense on paper and not at 2 a.m. With your eyes open. He left, he didn't, he wandered, he hid, he went out and went somewhere else and didn't want to be found. It's always an answer until you ask a question too specific. People in the neighborhood started. This is the part I hate, seeing him. Not in a dramatic way. No one said they saw Elliot standing at the end of their bed. And if they had, I wouldn't be telling you this. They said they saw a guy who looked like him walking between the stones in the fog. They said they saw a man with a notebook who put his hand up as if to ask them to wait and then stepped behind a hedge. They said they saw a mirror of him in the glass at the bus stop on Highgate Hill. Him in profile, him looking down, him not looking at the person who saw him. If you never knew Elliot, maybe every lanky 20-something in a beanie looks the same in bad light. If you did know him, you don't think that. This is the part where the story changes to the "and then it happened to me" bit. I wish it didn't. I wish I could stay in the safe space where I tell you a friend did a dumb brave thing and a place swallowed him the way places do sometimes. Into rivers, into forests, into crowds. But one night, months later, I walked past Waterloo Park because it was my route home. It was late, but not dangerous late. The fog was in a mood to be pretty rather than heavy. I didn't go near the wall. I wasn't bent on anything. I was carrying groceries. That's what I want to stress. I was a person carrying groceries. As I came even with the cemetery, I heard the noise coats make again. That sweep across grass. It came not from inside the wall, but from ahead, where the pavement curves. I slowed, because I always slow there now, because a part of me still thinks I can rewind an evening if I'm careful. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement, and this time I knew better than to give it the whole of my face. I kept my head turned just enough that you can see someone without seeing them. That's when I saw two hands on the top of the wall, the way you'd put your hands if you were about to pull yourself over or push yourself down. The fingers were pale and neat and carried themselves like they knew they were being watched and were trying not to make a fuss. They weren't dirty. There were no horror movie nails, just fingers. They tightened briefly, like someone bracing, to land, and then they let go, and the sound that followed was cloth brushing stone and then grass. I could have run. I didn't. I stood and pretended to check my phone. My heart did that thing where it beats in your throat. No one climbed the wall. No one jumped down. The hands were the whole show. After a minute, that might have been an hour, I walked on. At the corner, there's a terraced house with a ground floor flat and a broken doorbell. A woman was sitting inside with her small dog on the window ledge. She leaned forward and moved the curtain the way people do when they're trying to see, without committing. She met my eyes, which felt like a confession. She opened the window an inch and said in a whisper you couldn't use to order coffee, "You shouldn't stand there at night, love." I said, "I know." We both pretended she meant traffic or muggers. She swallowed and added, "They cross, right there. They do it quiet." Then she shut the window quickly, like she'd said more than she'd intended to a stranger. I kept walking. When I got home, I took the photocopy of Elliot's last line out of my drawer and put it on the table. I told myself I was going to throw it away. I didn't, it's still there. Sometimes I put a coin on it to stop it curling, and sometimes, if I've had a bad day, I put 2 coins, because that's a habit my brain learned without me. I've listened to the recording from that night too many times. You can hear us. You can hear the knocks. At the end, right before the audio cuts with a soft scrape like fabric on grit, you hear the notebook slide on the sleeping bag, and you hear Elliot breathe, in a way that isn't fear or contentment, but something like understanding. You can also hear very faintly what might be my name, but it might just be breath shaping into a sound. It scares me that I want it to be my name. It scares me more when I decide it isn't. I know what you want from a story like this. You want rules. Never look at them. Never say their names. Bring bread. Bring salt. Don't write. Do right. If you make the wrong move, you're theirs. If you make the right move, you're safe. I don't have rules. I have a weather report. In Highgate, the fog doesn't move the way it should at the back of the East Cemetery. The hedges keep a deeper dark that a torch doesn't pierce so much as insult. The ground gives if you stand in the wrong rectangle. The foxes do circuits like they're relieving each other of a shift. If you're alone, you aren't. If you're with friends, you're only as safe as the least careful among you. If you pay attention, something will notice that you're paying attention and will dislike it the way shy people dislike being introduced. Sometimes I think the worst thing I did wasn't leaving. It was arriving with a person who wanted to count. We went into the place of the uncounted and tried to make something tidy. If you want to think I'm making this into a metaphor because it's easier than swallowing the lack of a body, you might be right. But the night I heard those coat sounds and saw those hands, I went home and I didn't sleep. and at dawn I walked back the long way so I'd get there when the sky was pale and everyone out was the kind of person who walks dogs and makes you feel less like a character. I didn't climb any wall. I stood on the pavement and put my hand on the bricks, flat, like you do when you want to feel a heartbeat through a door. I said very quietly, not like a prayer and not like a demand, "Please let him go." It wasn't dramatic. No weight lifted. No whisper said my name correctly. The only answer was the sound of a bus that needed a new timing belt, but as I went to take my hand away, something brushed my fingers from the other side. The way ivy does when it grows through gaps, except ivy doesn't move like that in one heartbeat. It felt like skin that had been out in the cold a long time and was trying to remember warmth. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Then it was just brick again. I left my coin on top of the wall. That's not an offering. That's just a marker for me so I'd know where I'd put my hand next time without counting steps. If you go to Highgate as a tourist, you'll have a nice day and take photographs of angels who look like they've been crying for a century and a half. You'll talk about how Victorian excess is its own kind of wilderness. If you go for ghosts, you'll be bored and then scared and then stupid. If you go for the unclaimed, don't look for names. The pauper's ground is back there where the grass doesn't move the way grass moves anywhere else. If you feel like you're standing at the edge of a queue and you're being very rude about not making eye contact, you're in the right place. If you hear 3 knocks, don't knock back like it's a joke. It's never been funny. Sometimes late when my flat is in that quiet where the fridge cycles down and the street outside is a distant shush, I hear footsteps in the hallway that match mine when I cross the room. I've stopped matching. I walk, irregularly. I turn the tap on and off in weird rhythms. It's a stupid strategy, but I'm not trying to lose anything. I'm trying not to be counted. It's easier for them when you're a number. At the back of my wardrobe, under a sweater I never wear, there's a folded photocopy of that last page. I don't show it to people anymore because it makes them perform a face they don't mean, and I don't want that from anyone I love. On bad nights, I take it out and put it on the table with the coin. The ink shines in places it shouldn't. Sometimes the words look like they're a fraction darker than they were the night before. Maybe that's just the light. Maybe that's just me. It still reads the same. They know I see them now. They don't want to be seen. Neither do I. But here we are. If you ever find yourself walking past a place where the dead are meant to be, remembered but weren't, don't take it upon yourself to make up the difference. Recognition isn't always a gift. Sometimes it's a hook. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let a presence be general, not particular. If you can, be air. If you're already something else, be careful whose eyes you borrow. I used to laugh at the Archer Avenue stories. If you live on the southwest side long enough, someone will feed you a Resurrection Mary tale between bites of diner toast. Always the same beats, always the same pale girl in a white dress, always that stretch of road between the ballroom that burned down and the cemetery gates. It felt like the city's favorite campfire story, just traded under fluorescent lights and coffee breath at 3 a.m. I drive nights. I'm not a thrill seeker. I'm a guy who needed a schedule that let me watch my niece in the afternoons while my sister worked the ER. Nights meant fewer suits, more airport runs, bar-close pickups, tired people who just wanted to go home. I leased an older black sedan from the cab company in Bridgeview, meter on the dash, 2 radios, our old dispatch, and my own scanner. A sticky cup holder that always smelled faintly like grape jelly even when I never brought grape jelly in the car. My usual loop took me from midway through Summit and Justice back down Archer, sometimes out by Willow Springs if fares were decent. There were 3 of us who kept each other awake on the radio most nights. Me, an older guy named Art who'd been driving since the 90s, and Luce, our night dispatcher with a voice like a church bell, steady and calm no matter what was breaking. Without them, the job would have felt like being the last person up at a sleepover, bored and alone and staring at the ceiling fan. Art swore he'd picked up Mary back in 2003. Not Mary Mary, he'd say. A version of her? They're not all the same. That's my theory. He had theories for everything. His black hair had gone gray in patches, and he wore driving gloves year-round because the heater in his Crown Vic barely worked. When things got slow, he told stories. The fight he broke up outside a banquet hall when the bride's family was about to throw fists over a centerpiece. The time a raccoon burst out of a trash can near Stony Creek and he spilled coffee on his lap and drove half a block with scalded thighs screaming. The night he pulled to the shoulder for a girl in a white dress whose hair was too dry for the rain. He always said it like that. Too dry for the rain. Yeah, I told him the first. What, you offered her an umbrella? She gets in, Art said, ignoring me. Doesn't talk, looks out the window like she's counting trees. Says she needs to go home. I say home where? She says, right there. And the air, it goes cold, like the car's been sitting in a freezer. I drop her by the gates because that's what you do. She doesn't open the door. I turn to ask if she's got money for the fare, and she's gone. Door's still locked. I think maybe she's on the floor, maybe she's having some kind of episode. I panic. Then I see her walking along the fence outside like she's in two places at once. Before my brain catches up, I hear this scraping on the iron. I drive, that's it. And you didn't go back and check? He smiled the way you smile at a kid who asks why the sky is blue. You don't go back. That's my other theory. I didn't believe him, but saying so would have made the nights longer. Luz would say, he's keeping you awake, leave him be, and then throw a fare our way to break it up. It wasn't that the story scared me. It just felt lazy. This city has enough real ghosts, the kind you meet when you make rent late or when winter outlasts your paycheck, that the idea of a girl in a white dress felt like a luxury. The night this happened, we had lake effect flurries that didn't stick but made the air heavy. The streetlights on Archer threw tight little cones of yellow that swallowed the sidewalks and spat them back out empty. I'd been up since noon for my niece's school play, and I only took the shift because Luz texted that we were short driver. Andre called in sick, and the suburbs were hopping with 2 weddings and a quinceañera on the same stretch. You'll eat, she'd promised. She wasn't wrong. By midnight, I'd already made more than a typical Friday. Around 1, I ducked into a diner near 63rd to refill my coffee. There's a booth by the window where drivers sit because you can park illegally and still see your car if a cop swings by. The place smells like hash browns and mop water. There's always a guy in a flannel jacket nursing a bowl of chili and not talking to anyone. I took my coffee to go and stepped back into that thin snow that doesn't decide if it wants to be snow. My car made its old man cough before catching. I rubbed the spot on the dash where the plastic had warped from sun. Luz's voice bubbled through the radio. 184, you clear? Clear, I said. Ping at 79th and Archer. Side of the road looks like near the bus stop. Copy, I said. On my way. Art cut in. Don't take Archer past the cemetery, kid. Cut over on 73rd. Come on, I said. It's fine. On a night like this? She likes nights like this. Luz clicked her tongue. Art. What? I'm making conversation. I smiled despite myself and pulled onto Archer, the tires whispering over patched asphalt. The GPS showed a blue dot in the right lane, just past an unlit stretch. The address field said, unknown. That happens sometimes if a drunk puts a pin anywhere and doesn't type a destination. The app still takes the money. I passed the banquet hall lot where they pitched white tents for weddings in summer. It's just a black rectangle now. Gravel dusted with snow, chain link around the whole thing. Everyone still calls it by the old name even though the sign's gone. In the rear view, a semi rumbled a quarter-mile behind me, its headlights throwing, hot white on the road. My windshield wipers squeaked on a dry swipe, then found moisture and settled into a rhythm. Right where the map said, I saw a figure by the shoulder. You know the way a person looks on a winter night when they're hugging themselves for warmth? Head down, hair catching the little flakes? That. A white dress with a waist like the old pictures my grandma kept of dances. Bare arms. No coat. I thought, great. Prom, a breakup, some kind of mess. I rolled past, then braked hard enough that the coffee lid launched a brown arc onto my floor mat. I reversed until I was next to her and leaned across to push open the passenger door. The dome light came on in a slow, tired glow, For a second, she didn't move, like maybe she hadn't heard me. Then she lifted her head and looked at the car like it had materialized. Her hair was blonde, but the kind of blonde that's almost colorless in that light. Her eyes were gray. If you'd asked me later what she looked like, I would have said she looked like a photograph. Flat and too perfect until you move and it doesn't. "You need a ride?" I asked. She nodded once. She didn't smile. She climbed in like someone, stepping into church careful, polite. When the door shut, the temperature in the car fell 5 degrees. It wasn't dramatic, not like a movie. My knuckles just tightened around the steering wheel and I was suddenly aware of each breath fogging the windshield and how the heater's low hum wasn't touching anything. "Where are you heading?" I said, flipping the meter. My voice sounded too loud in my own ears. She looked out the window toward the dark line of trees and fence. "Home." "Okay, where's home?" She lifted a pale hand and pointed down the road. "Just there." "You mean the cemetery?" She didn't answer. The truck behind me changed lanes and hissed past, wind pushing at my car as if to rub it in. I said, "Tell you what, I'll take you to the gates. You can call someone." Her hands folded in her lap like she'd forgotten how to own them. "Just there is fine." I put the car in drive and eased forward. The snow shifted from undecided to little needles against the glass. Archer felt longer suddenly, like the road had stretched the way that hallway in a dream stretches when you run toward a door and never get closer. My tires hummed. The heater coughed. In the mirror, I watched her face in the glow of the dashboard. She watched the fence slide by. It is tall, that fence, wrought iron painted black with a pattern that makes you think of old things that want to last forever. Past it, rows of stones. I've seen it 1,000 times in daylight. At night it felt like a movie set where the background is just a painted cloth. "You from around here?" I asked because silence was making me aware of blood in my ears. She tilted her head like she wasn't sure what I meant. "We used to dance," she said. "At the ballroom?" The word slipped out. "Always the ballroom with this story." She nodded. "There was a band with a trumpet player who wore a hat he wasn't supposed to wear indoors. My father hated that." The way she said father had weight, like a word from a different time. She breathed in and it sounded like paper moving. "Is someone coming to get you?" "Just there is fine," she said again, more quietly, like repetition made it true. It's amazing how the human brain will accept something that isn't normal if you give it enough slow minutes. A girl in a dress alone in the cold. Maybe she had a fight. Maybe she ran. Maybe she lost her phone. She didn't look drunk. She didn't smell like anything. That was the detail that would pry at me later. People smell. The diner stays on you. The bar, cigarettes, perfume, laundry soap. She smelled like nothing, not clean, not dirty, just absent. We approached the section of road where the fence kinks toward the gate. The arches at the top of the pillars looked like knuckles. A car behind us flicked its brights and then changed lanes with the irritated zip of a turn signal. Up ahead, the gate was locked, the way it always is at that hour. My fingers were cold inside my gloves. I rolled my shoulders to shake off the stiffness. "I'll drop you by the entrance," I said. "You sure you're okay?" She watched the gate like a person watching a train arrive. "Please," she said. The word dug into that tendony spot under my jaw. I don't know why. There's this spot in the road where the asphalt has been patched and repatched and the car bumps twice like a heartbeat. I felt it, and then, like a switch, the air in the car went wrong. The heater noise didn't change, but my breath fogged heavy enough that I had to swipe the windshield with the back of my hand just to see. The hair on my forearms prickled under my coat. The dome light flickered by itself. The meter numbers I know by heart, blurred and then jumped like the car hit a pothole. "Damn it," I said. But it came out as a whisper. I pulled into the little gravel shelf by the gate and put the car in park. The headlights washed the iron in white. Flakes ticked against it and melted and vanished. The girl turned her face to me for the first time since she'd gotten in. She wasn't smiling. She didn't look sad. She looked like a person about to ask something big and not sure if I deserved to hear it. "Could you walk me to the gate?" she asked. That should have been the detail that pushed this from eerie into simple kindness. You're on a dark road. A girl asks you to walk her 20 feet. You do it. You don't overthink. But my body felt like a thing I'd stolen and I couldn't make my hand open the door. I don't think I can," I said. My voice shook. "I shouldn't leave the car here. Trucks fly by. I can put my flashers on. I can watch you go. Up, I can call someone for you. You shouldn't be alone." Her eyes dropped to my sleeve. She reached for it, not fast, not dramatic, like she was making a polite request to touch a fabric to see what it was made of. When her fingers closed around the cuff, I jerked. It was not cold like when you grab something out of the freezer and it's cold. It was absence. Like my sleeve had dipped into the idea of winter. And all at once, every job I'd ever had, every cab ride, every diner coffee, every night I'd convinced myself I loved the quiet, every bit of it turned into air. "I can't go past the gate," she said softly. "Not alone." My brain understood her sentence in a human way. "I can't go in there by myself, please walk me." But another part of me processed the same words like a riddle. Past the gate was a statement, not a location. As if the gate was a border between two kinds of seeing. A horn blared. The semi I'd seen a mile back was on us, the driver swerving slightly because the road pinched at the gate. My hazard lights weren't on. My mind had gone blank and left small chores undone. The truck's horn wrenched me back into myself, the way a doctor's voice will bring you up from a deep sedation. I tore my sleeve out of her grip, and the ripping sound, fabric not skin, hit me right in the spine. I stumbled with my hand slamming the hazard switch. Red flashed on iron. The truck thundered past, wind wobbling the car hard enough to knock a CD case from the passenger door pocket. We both watched it, dumbly, like the CD falling had meaning. "Okay," I said, shaking. "Okay, but she wasn't there." The passenger seat had a slight dip where weight had been. My ripped cuff hung loose and stupid around my wrist. My breath looked like smoke. Outside, beyond my headlight beam, a figure in white stood by the gate. Her face turned toward the fence bars like there was lots to study there. It wasn't theatrical. She didn't glow. She looked like a girl. That was worse. The snow didn't stick to her hair. I opened the door. My legs moved me without checking with the rest of me. Gravel popped under my boots. The hazard lights knocked, red against the iron. I could hear the little plastic tick behind my steering column. The sound of winter is a collection of small noises like that. Plastic ticking, tires on old asphalt, your breath through the scarf, far-off horns. The shadow of her dress laid itself in the light streaks between bars. When I got close enough, that reason would have called out hello. My throat closed. My lips made the shape of the word, but the sound stayed behind my tongue. She touched the bars. The tips of her fingers were pale as paper. There was one sliver of fabric caught on a welded curl of iron, fluttering like something alive. It was blue. In the stupid, hyper-focused way people notice things when they're in shock, I thought, that's my jacket, the cuff, the part she grabbed. She turned her head, not all the way to me, like a person sneaking a look at a stranger in church. Her profile had the clean lines of a picture in a book about old families. She looked 19. I don't know how I knew. I just knew. I stepped closer because doing nothing felt like drowning. "I can't go past the gate," she said again. This time it was almost an apology. "What happens if you do?" I asked. It was a child's question, and I hated hearing it come out of me. She didn't answer. People always say ghosts don't blink, but she blinked. She breathed. The only thing that didn't line up was the white dress in a winter wind not moving the way fabric should. It held its shape too exact. The snow collected in the folds and then let go without wetting them. If I'd taken a picture, it would have looked like a dress on a mannequin in a store window, not outside in Illinois in January. "Do you want me to call someone?" I said. "A friend? Your dad? You said father." She touched the piece of my cuff with 2 fingers and the blue darkened like water wicking into tissue. I realized then what she'd been smelling like. It wasn't the absence of smell. It was an old thing I know from funerals. The cold chemical of a room without a window. The air in there is clean in a way that makes your lungs question their purpose. It wasn't unpleasant. It was so neutral. It circled back around to unsettling. "I don't want to make trouble," she said. Her voice, close now, had a rhythm that was 10 p.m. on a porch swing. She lifted the fabric free and let it float down. It fell slower than it should have and landed in the snow at my boot. "You should go." Are you okay?" I asked, because it was the last script I had. She looked at me then, fully. I'd tell you what her eyes looked like, but I can't without sounding like I'm trying to make something big out of something small. They were eyes. They were sad in a way that didn't ask for anything. The hazard light flashed on the bars, behind her. Red, dark, red, dark. "Sometimes I get far," she said. "Sometimes not as far." She lifted a hand as if to touch my face the way you would touch a mirror to check if it's real. I didn't move. She paused, then dropped her hand gently. "Please go." I stepped back because there was nothing else to do that wasn't going to break something. The tick-tick of the hazards took on an almost comic insistence. I picked up the ripped piece of my cuff. It was stiff like it had spent a night hung in the backyard in February. I backed to the car and got in. The seat creaked. The warmth that the heater had been trying to push out finally arrived, weak and late. I put the car in drive and pulled back onto Archer. In the mirror, the gate slipped sideways. She didn't disappear between frames like in a horror clip. She just changed from a person to a shape to a memory of a person in the rear view, the way anyone does when you drive away from them. I didn't talk on the radio for a while. Luz pinged me once, twice. 184, you clear? Art's voice came in, thin through static. "Kid?" I didn't answer because answering felt like telling the story before the story was over, and I had the stupid sense that if I talked, it would notice me. She. I don't know how to write that in a way that looks sane. You can judge me. When the city reasserted itself in the form of a Walgreens and a bus stop, with a person wrapped like a burrito smoking in his cocoon, I let my breath out and pressed the radio. "Clear," I said. "Sorry, had a car issue." "You good?" Luz asked. I could picture her at dispatch, nails tapping the desk between calls, hair up like always, a half-eaten bag of spicy chips to her left. "Yeah," I said. My voice came out flat. "Had to pull over." "On Archer?" Art asked. I didn't answer him. I took a fare from a bar in Summit to an apartment above a garage in Clearing. The guys in the back argued about a breakup like I wasn't there. It was a relief, their normal mess. In the glow of the meter, the ripped edge of my cuff looked clean, too straight. When I rubbed the piece between my fingers at a stoplight, my nails came away with a glitter of frost. Frost doesn't stick around like that inside a warm car. I didn't drop the piece. I kept it like a person keeps dumb things. Bottle caps, ticket stubs. People like me have always loved proof you can touch even when you pretend we don't. After my shift, I drove home by the long way because the short way went back past the gate. I put the ripped piece of cuff on my kitchen table and then turned on every light like a coward. My apartment is a nothing apartment. One small living room, a bedroom that used to be a larger closet, a bathroom with the kind of shower that squeals when you turn it. The neighbors upstairs fight and make up at volumes that make you feel like family. I sat at the table and watched the fabric like it might move. It didn't. Around 4 in the morning, I fell asleep with my cheek stuck to my coat sleeve and woke to the soft beep of my phone telling me I had a new message in the driver app. It was a request. The timestamp said 1:07 a.m. The pickup pin was a blue dot on Archer near the gate. No username, no rating, just a gray silhouette, and the letter M. The destination field said home. The app showed it as canceled a minute later. That's not unusual. What made my neck tighten was the note under special instructions, a thing riders can type in that we almost never see. "The gate, please." I took my niece to school at 8 and tried to keep my face straight. The world was bright, kids tracked, snow in. Everyone had hats with pom-poms. My sister, who can tell when my blood sugar dips from across a room, pulled me aside in the hallway. "You look like someone told you a bad joke," she said. I lied and said I was tired. She kissed my cheek like I was a kid and told me to take a nap. I did, and dreamt about a white sheet on a clothesline that never moved with the wind. I went back in daylight. Logic told me to let it wash out in the sun, to turn it into what it had to be. A sleep-deprived guy scaring himself because the city needed something to talk about. I parked by the shoulder with 18 other people who had the same thought and whose cameras were braver than their legs. Someone had tied pink silk flowers to the fence in neat little bouquets. There were bobby pins stuck into the paint, hair ties looped around decorative twirls. Old myths, collect offerings. If you've seen a roadside cross grow over a summer, you know the shape of this. I walked to the spot where the gravel shelf dips into a little trough. It looked like 1,000 other pieces of iron. If you were expecting scorch marks, your disappointment would make you feel stupid. But at eye level, caught on the curl of one bar, a blue piece of fabric had stiffened into something like paper. I touched it. It crackled. The color matched my sleeve. I slid it free and held it up to the gray daylight. My heart did a small, mean thing in my chest. People like me will tell you we don't believe because we don't want to believe in the wrong thing and look like idiots. But this was my jacket. I could see the loose thread from where I'd snagged it last week on the part of the meter that never stops being sharp no matter how many times I sand it. I put the piece in my pocket because I couldn't think what else to do while strangers with cameras were taking pictures of nothing. Back at the cab lot, Art saw my face and didn't tell a joke. "You saw her," he said, not a question. "Something like that," I said. My mouth felt chapped. He showed me the inside of his glove. The seam at the wrist had a gap just big enough to catch a fingernail. "Mine was leather," he said. "Back then when they paid drivers enough to buy toys. She took a piece of it. I always thought, maybe that's how she says hello." "How do you live with it?" I said, stupid again, as if it were a roommate. "You drive," he said. "You pay rent. You keep salt in your trunk for your steps in February. You call dispatch. You don't take Archer unless you need to. You okay?" He looked at me like the answer mattered. "I don't know," I said. That was the truth. He nodded like that was an acceptable answer. For a while, I did what people do when they've been nudged out of the lane they like to travel. I changed my routes by an extra block or two. I took airport runs instead of bar pickups. I started a stupid habit of knocking on wood before a shift, a thing I'd mocked my grandma for when I was 12. I kept the 2 pieces of blue cuff, mine, and the one from the gate, in a plastic sandwich bag in my glove box like evidence of a crime. Some nights the bag felt like a thing in the car with me. I also checked my dash cam. It's not fancy. It loops and blurs at night when some headlights are too bright. I scrolled back to the time I'd parked by the gate. On the screen, I watched myself drive with my face too bright and too tense in the glow of the dashboard. I watched the passenger door open. I watched it close, the seat next to me depressed. The dome light lit like it does when someone sits. But the seatbelt chime never came on, because she wasn't heavy enough for the car to notice. Or because she was exactly heavy enough but the car didn't have a rule for this. There was no shape on the camera, no white dress, no hair. There was the slow fog of my breath. There was my sleeve jerking back, and the frame blurring, and the ripping noise of fabric shredded. The sound is what I remember if I think too hard. The easy zip of cloth parting and then that huge truck horn like a slap. After that, my face on the camera looks like a joke at my expense and I hate it. You never want a camera to know what you look like when your brain is a storm. I told Luce in person because I didn't want to use the radio. She listened with her chin in her hand, eyebrows drawn the way they do when she's deciding whether to send somebody to 95th with a fare she knows will stiff them. When I got to the part about the ripped sleeve, she set her coffee down and said, "My uncle drove nights and wouldn't pick up on that stretch. He used to say there are rules. I believe in rules." "What rules?" I asked, feeling like a child again. "Don't stop for anyone who looks like they're going to make you into a story you tell later," she said. "Don't laugh at people who won't take that road at night in January. Don't try to fix a thing that doesn't need you to fix it. I'll reroute Archer requests for you a while." "That's not your job," I said. "It is tonight," she said. Her nails tapped the desk twice like punctuation. I could end here, and it would be a decent story to tell at a diner where the chili is always too salty. But a week later on a Sunday so cold the air hurt, I drove my niece to my sister's place after a movie, and I cut down Archer because it was daylight and everything was harmless. You know how you'll put a hand near a hot stove just to confirm. It was hot even though, it was that. My niece fell asleep in the passenger seat, her hat slipping over her eyes, mouth open like a little kid again even though she's 12 and rolling hers most days. The sun was low but unapologetically bright. It caught the snow crust on the cemetery and made it into glitter. The iron fence looked like iron, not like a picture of iron. I let myself think we'd all been dramatic. Half a block from the gate, the GPS on my phone, which was not running any map, pinged. It lit up on the console as if I'd requested directions. The blue dot spun and settled and the screen wrote, "Resurrection Cemetery Gates." Under that, smaller, like a whisper stuck in a throat, "The gate, please." Traffic moved. I didn't. The car behind me tapped its horn, not a yell, just a, "Hey buddy, be awake." My niece stirred and blinked at me. "We home?" she mumbled. "Almost," I said. My voice had that cloth over it again. "Go back to sleep." At the gate, a girl stood on the gravel shelf, not in the road, not even close to it, the way a careful person stands. White dress, bare arms, hair that didn't collect light the way hair should. She didn't wave. She didn't put her thumb out. She waited like anyone, the way you stand with hope and try not to look like you're hoping. My hands tightened on the wheel hard enough that my knuckles whitened. If she had looked at me fully, I think I might have stopped. She kept her head, turned a little, watching the fence like there were words written there that might change if she read them enough times. I drove on. The sound of my tires over the patch fell into that two-beat rhythm again. My niece sighed and turned her face to the window. In the rear view, the gate slid to the side of the frame and disappeared. The GPS cleared itself like a text you typed and then thought better of. When I breathed out, my breath fogged in an empty way that made no sense for daylight and a warm cabin, and then it cleared and the world was the world again. I don't tell this to scare myself. I can scare myself with my bills. I tell it because I think we have two cities. There's the one with bus schedules and the diner and rent and salt stains on your boots. Then there's the other that is exactly on top of the first one and shares all the same streets and ignores all the same traffic laws and uses the same bad coffee. And you meet that one when you don't want to, and then you have to make room for it. A thing can be real and also be a story. That's my theory. I still drive nights, most nights. I still take Archer when it's the smart route. I still stop for people when they wave me down, because that's the job, and because Chicago will chew you up if you decide everyone out there is a threat. There are rules. One of mine. I do not pick up on the gravel shoulder by the gate. You can call me superstitious or cowardly or boring. You can say I left someone's daughter standing there in the cold. You can be right and wrong at the same time. That's another rule this city teaches you. Sometimes when I pass, there's nothing but fence and snow and little bouquets tied on for reasons I don't know. Sometimes I see a white shape where there shouldn't be one and I focus on the road, like a good boy, and count to 40 like I'm trying to get through turbulence. Once I saw a guy in a truck slow way down, hazard lights blinking, and I wanted to roll down my window and tell him he didn't have to be a hero for a ghost that didn't want him to be. I kept my mouth shut. The truck moved on. The road ate our tire noise. You can call it atmosphere if you need it to be pretty. I call it Archer Avenue at 2 in the morning. You'll have your own rules after this, I bet. Maybe you'll laugh and think about how my hands shook telling it to you and you'll feel big for not shaking. Maybe you'll drive out there with someone you want to impress and you'll point and tell the greatest hits version and hope the road gives you a show. Maybe you'll sit at the diner with mop water in your sinuses and a guy like me will sit down and tell you a quieter version because he wants to see if your face goes pale in that honest way a face goes pale when something pries at it. If you ever see her, if you're on Archer, and the snow can't make up its mind and the fence catches your lights and you notice a girl in a too thin white dress standing where no one with sense stands, ask yourself if what you're about to do is for her or for you. If it's for her, I think she'll be fine without your help. If it's for you, keep driving. And if you hear someone in the passenger seat who isn't there, say, Just there is fine. Don't be a scientist. Don't be a hero. Don't be me. Put your hazards on for the trucks and go. That's my last rule. It's the only one that's kept me from collecting anything stranger than a piece of blue cloth that should have thawed and never did. If you're from around Douglas County, you already know the name Stull. It's one of those places people joke about until the sun goes down, like a dare wrapped in a story wrapped in a warning. My dad used to wave it off when I was a kid. Teenagers and beer, he'd say, flipping channels after the evening news. Some old limestone and a bad imagination. But there was a look he'd get sometimes when a late wind pushed against the kitchen windows, and he'd check the porch light without standing up. He wouldn't admit it then, but he's the one who taught me to respect the kind of place everybody pretends they don't believe in. I run a small operation west of Lawrence. Beans, corn when it's worth it, some Milo, a few calves that give me more headaches than profit. It's not romantic. It's early mornings and busted knuckles and whether the rain will show up on time. My wife, Lena, keeps the books in the home steady. My younger cousin, Cody, helps me with the heavy lifting and tries to talk me into new gadgets we can't afford. We've got a good dog named Brisket who thinks he's a cattle prod with paws. We're not spooky people. We go to church some Sundays. We pay taxes. We lost a set of hedge clippers to the creek 2 springs ago, and I still think about them when I walk past that bend. That's the scale of drama in my life. Or it used to be. Last fall, after the beans came off light and the night started carrying that clean cold you only get on the plains, my friend Jess came back to town. She grew up in Lecompton, left for Wichita, and now sells insurance statewide, so she's back through a few times a year. She'd heard the college kids talking about Stull over in Lawrence like they always do before Halloween when the newspapers reprint the same article about trespassing and tickets. Jess asked me, half teasing, half serious, if we'd ever gone up there to look. I said no. She laughed because she knew my younger self would have sooner chugged a bottle of Tabasco than admit to being spooked by a graveyard. "Come on," she said. "I'll bring tacos. We'll just drive by and look from the road." "Private property," I said. "Sheriff's office doesn't think it's funny. We're not going in." She set her to-go coffee on my porch rail and squinted into the gold light. "You're the one who always says there's nothing to it." She had me cornered. I could either admit that the place made me uneasy, or I could prove I didn't care. Pride is not smart, but it's stubborn. I told her we could drive past for a story and then come back for the tacos. Lena shook her head and said she didn't want to hear about it if we got a ticket. We went that same evening, around 8. The sky was still bruised from sunset when we turned off the highway onto the county road. The fields were bare. The windbreaks looked like paper cutouts against the dim. We drove with the windows cracked so we could hear the cicadas and the quiet between them. I remember saying that it was just another rural cemetery, like the ones tucked behind almost every church around here. Old stones, a few newer ones, hedges grown wild. I said it like a charm. When we came up on Stull, the ruined church silhouette was there like a broken tooth. You can see it before you see the sign. People call it a church, but it's really a handful of limestone walls standing in a rectangle. That used to be something, long before my grandparents were born. The cemetery stretches around it, not big, not neatly fenced in places. There's a gate, and it really does lean. Every article calls it the leaning gate, like the gate leans on purpose to make a point. There are no trespassing signs. There's a warning about surveillance. We pulled to the shoulder across the road. Jess turned off the truck lights and we sat with the engine idling low. "Happy now?" I said. "Not yet," she said, grinning. "This is the part where you pretend like you're not going to tell me a story." I told her the story I grew up hearing, because it's the one everyone hears. A farmer back in the day parked here, on a dare. When his headlights crossed the stones, he saw a tall, hooded figure standing between rows. He thought it was kids. Then it moved. No footsteps, no sound, gliding over the grass toward him. He peeled out and never went back. For years after, he'd see the same figure at the edge of his fields watching. It never crossed the fence line, he'd say. But fences don't always work the way you want them to. Jess shifted, made a shiver, sound like a joke. Your dad told you that? I nodded. He said it was a friend of my granddad's. He never told me the name. Convenient, she said. Anonymous sources always are. I almost laughed. Then our truck headlights still off. Picked up just enough spill from somebody going by on the highway a half-mile away to give the cemetery a shallow wash. The weeds and stones turned into shapes. The black rectangle of the ruined walls cut a piece out of the sky. And there, at the far side, diagonal from the gate, a taller patch of dark stood where there wasn't any tree. At first I thought it was a trick of the angle. Then it slid left, not like a person moving a leg, but like a shadow, shifting when a cloud crosses the moon. Jess whispered, "Did you see that?" I don't like admitting fear, even to myself. Probably a bush. There aren't any bushes. That tall, she said. A gust came through, sent dry leaves scratching across the pavement. The truck's dash lights dimmed for a second, that weird little power wobble older vehicles do. I took my foot off the brake and the truck rolled half, a foot forward. The darker shape across the way didn't sway or ripple with the wind. It tipped, no, it leaned like a hooded person might if they wanted you to know you were being given attention. I turned the key off on instinct. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted the engine noise gone so I could hear better. Maybe I wanted the option to say later that the truck had trouble starting, that was why we stayed as long as we did. The night got big without the motor. The cicadas sounded too far away. Jess held her breath. I didn't know I was holding mine until my chest hurt. In that cold, without the engine hum, sounds carried clean. I should have heard wind in the trees, across the road. I should have heard my own jacket whisper when I shifted. Instead, it felt like the air had a lid on it. The only thing I could hear was my heartbeat, and the tiniest grit of dirt pinging against the undercarriage. The dark shape leaned again. It didn't step. It erased distance between us in a way I can't describe without it sounding like I'm dressing it up. One moment it was at the far stones. The next, it was a row closer. Same size, same peak to its top, like a hood over a head. There was a sense to it of very tall and very narrow. No arms showing, no shine. Not like a person in a hoodie would look. More like how a tall sack of wheat might look if it stood upright and meant it. Jess reached for the headlight switch. I grabbed her wrist without thinking. She pulled free. The headlights came on with a wash, bright and yellow. The cemetery popped into plain view. Stones, weeds, the sagging rectangle of ruin, and nothing where that figure had been. Empty grass. Jess let out a breath, a shaky laugh that wasn't a laugh. Okay, it's nothing. Happy? The truck stalled. I hadn't even put it in gear. The headlights stayed on, but the engine died, and all my attention went into the smell of hot metal and the way the key felt suddenly wrong in my hand. I tried to start it. The starter whirred. Nothing caught. I turned the key again. Again. I thought I would flood it, but I was past caring. Jess chewed at her lip and looked at the ruined walls like they'd offer her a better answer than I could. Then she leaned forward and snapped the headlights off again. "What are you doing?" I said. My voice came out too loud. With the engine dead, each word sounded like it had hard edges. "Just look," she said. There, 2 rows in from the leaning gate, a tall, dark shape reappeared. Where it hadn't been. No fade in. No figure stepping from behind a stone. Just there, like somebody had painted with the night itself. It stood very straight, wider at the bottom than the top. I couldn't see a face. I couldn't see anything like hands. I could feel it noticing the truck the way you feel a storm catching scent of dry ground. "Start it," Jess said. I tried. The engine clicked like a clock with sticky gears. For a stupid second I had the thought that we were in one of those campfire stories, and I didn't want to be the guy who made the wrong move and proved the story right. The dash clock blinked and reset to 12:06. Jess swore softly. She doesn't do that much. When the engine finally caught, it did it with a cough, like it had been underwater. I dropped us into gear. We didn't peel out. I didn't want gravel, spitting toward anybody's grave. Maybe that sounds silly. We rolled away too slow, but we rolled. Jess faced forward, breathing hard. I watched the side mirror for the tall shape because I couldn't make myself stop. I saw it standing at the gate as we passed the sign that said Stull. I don't know if it moved there or had been there the whole time, and we'd seen something else in the middle. I saw the peak of what my brain insists on calling a hood lean a fraction of an inch. The road ahead of us felt longer than it should have. When we hit the highway and the comfort of passing semis, I let my jaw unclench. Jess didn't say anything until we were at the Shell station in Clinton, and even then it was to point at the clock over the cashier's head. It said 9:04. My phone said 8:36. The truck clock said 12:06 again, none of which would mean anything if not for how it felt to sit there under fluorescent lights, two adults with tacos going cold on the passenger seat, and shakes we pretended were from the chill. Jess said, "We're not telling your wife." I said, "We're definitely not going back." We didn't. We went home and ate at the table like normal people and watched a terrible movie to wash the night out. I didn't sleep. Brisket put his chin on my foot in the way he does when a storm's coming. There was no storm. That week, little glitches started. The wind chimes on the north porch went still on days they should have rung out. My truck's dash clock blinked to 12:06 exactly twice, no other times, never when I was thinking about it. Brisket refused to step into the barn after dusk. He would run to the door, hackles up, then look at me with apologies in his eyes and back away. Out by the shelter belt, a place that always smells like leaf dust, there was sometimes this damp ash smell that made me think of the time a neighbor burned brush too close to a pile of wet hay. On Thursday, Lena pulled up the kitchen shade and made a small noise that called me over faster than words. The eastern field, the one that slopes toward the creek, has a long run of hedge trees. At the very end of it, where the fence meets the road, a tall dark shape stood. Not a tree trunk, not a bale, too thin for that, too tall. Just where the field ends and the world starts, it stood, and even from the kitchen we could feel that it was not at rest. I blinked, and it was just darkness again. Morning light not filtering enough to show detail. "Tell me I didn't see that," Lena said. She's not dramatic, she handles calves pulling the dumbest stunts known to man with a long sigh and a halter. "You saw something," I said. "It could be a shadow off the power line." We both knew where shadows from the power line fall. They fall across the shed roof and the well line, not out by the eastern fence. We went outside anyway and walked to the spot. No prints. The ground was crushed in a circle like tired earth. Brisket sniffed and sneezed and put his head down in that low, humbled way dogs have when they want to be invisible. I called Deputy Hart because I didn't want to be the guy who didn't call. He came out, parked on the road, stepped around, careful because everybody knows not to tromp over private land without a good reason. He's from here. He gets it. He listened. He didn't roll his eyes. He told us that around this time of year, this county gets a handful of creepy calls. People see things they think they don't believe in. "It's the season," he said. "A lot of it is kids. Some of it is wildlife looking strange in the dusk. Some of it I couldn't tell you if you paid me." "What if it follows?" Lena asked. I loved her for how she said it. No tremble. Just fact. Deputy Hart looked out toward the shelter belt at the long shadows of afternoon. "Then you set your motion lights and you keep your dog close. Don't go out there at night without company. And don't go back to that church." He coughed a little, like he'd said more than he meant to. "Property owner has had it, and if it's kids, they'll be out there with their phones trying to scare you. Leave it be." We tried. Life fills with things you have to do. The drill on the planter seized. One of the calves found a hole in the back fence line and made a break for the neighbor's alfalfa. The well pump made a sound it shouldn't. You keep moving because if you stop to make sense of any one thing, 14 others will tip over. Jess texted me a link to an article about Stull with a thumbnail of the ruins in daylight and the headline written for clicks. I didn't open it, on our. Sunday, my dad came by with a sack of bolts in his old toolbox. He acted like he had just happened to be driving past and had just happened to have the bolts we needed for the old gate near the bin. While he worked, he told a story I hadn't heard in full. "We came up on Stull in the fall of '79, he said, keeping his eyes on the hinge like it mattered in a new way. Your granddad was in a mood. He'd had a fight with a man at the co-op over a scale ticket. Drove us out there after supper, said he wanted to see if the stories were as dumb as they sounded. He didn't like people carrying on. We parked across the road. There was a fog that night, thin, like breath. He turned the lights off to make his point. Your grandma told him to knock it off. Then he got real quiet. He put the truck in reverse, without turning his neck, and we came home and he never said why. I asked once in the barn and he said, sometimes there's something. You don't need to know everything. That was his kindness. Did he see it again, I said. Dad tightened the bolt, considered. I wouldn't know what it is, but he started checking the western fence every morning right after daybreak. He'd stand there with his hands on the posts and look toward the road. When he died, we found the path worn into the grass where he made that walk 10,000 times. Your grandmother pretended not to notice. I didn't tell Dad what Jess and I had seen. I didn't want to hand the fear to him and see a shape grow in his eyes that might look like the one at the end of the field. A week after that, Jess insisted on coming back out one evening with a bag of snacks and her stubbornness. She said she was having nightmares anyway and might as well face them. Lena said we were idiots and then packed us thermoses as if that would make the outing a normal one. Don't get arrested, she said. Don't bring anything home. That last part lodged under my ribs. It felt like a rule I hadn't considered. Not a souvenir, not a ghost hunting trinket. Just the idea that there are places that give, and you don't want to carry what they offer. We didn't go to the cemetery. We took a long loop around it. We stayed on county roads. We didn't park. We passed the corner, where you can see the ruin if you turn your head just right. I didn't. Jess did, and then she sat forward like she'd smelled smoke. Do you hear that? She said. I killed the radio. We let our windows down 6 inches. The night had the same held breath quiet as before, like the sound had been wrapped in wool. Far off, a dog barked once. The truck coasted. The lane lines slid by. When we passed a mailbox with 3 reflectors in a row, the temperature inside, the cab dropped so fast my teeth hurt. Jess put her hand on the dash like it needed steadying. Her breath fogged the window. Mine didn't. I looked in the rear view because that's what you do when you're trying to be sure. In it, the road. Behind us was a deeper dark than the road ahead, as if the truck was pulling night out of a pocket and unspooling it behind us. Keep going, Jess said. Don't stop. Not stopping, I said. Something tapped the back window. A small, precise sound like a fingernail. Tap, tap, tap. I didn't turn. Jess did, and then grabbed my arm so hard it made my hand go numb for a second. It's on the tailgate, she said. Not loud, not whispering. A flat statement. Tall. It leaned and the cap brushed the glass. She swallowed. It's watching the glass instead of us. I don't see it, I said, and that was true. In the rear view, the world was just dark and my own eyes small and frightened in the glass. But you don't always see the thing that scares you in the place you expect. Sometimes you see it somewhere else and tell yourself it's something. You ate, I didn't hit the brakes, I didn't floor it. I did the stupid sensible thing, I kept the truck at 50. We came to the T. We turned toward home. Jess kept staring at the back window until we hit gravel where the county forgot to patch after the spring rains. Then she closed her eyes for 2 seconds, and when she opened them again, tears had spilled without her permission. I'm not crazy, she said. I know, I said. We didn't talk about it in the house, I don't know why. Maybe we didn't want to use our kitchen air for those words. We sat and drank coffee we didn't need. Brisket lay under the table with his paws over his nose. Lena rubbed his head without looking at him and asked us about ordinary things like whether the feed delivery came on time. We answered like ordinary people. We were not. I started finding small piles of grit by the back door in the mornings. Not dirt. Not the kind of dust that blows under a sill. It had the texture of stone ground on stone. The motion light on the north porch tripped at 12:06 2 nights in a row. When I stepped out, nothing moved, but the chimes made one single note like a spoon tapping a jar. I changed the bulb anyway. I checked the wiring. I told myself mice can set off a sensor. I set traps. The traps remained unserious, empty. The third night, Lena woke me with her hand on my shoulder. "Don't get up," she said. Her voice was not like it is when she hears raccoons in the cans. It was the voice I heard once before, when a tornado siren went off without rotation in the sky and she didn't trust the quiet. "Just listen." A sound came from the barnyard. Not footsteps, not a door. More like cloth moving over rough wood. A long, unhurried slide, then a pause, then another. It came from the barn door and moved along the planks toward the corner where the shadow is, deeper because of the way the security light throws. Brisket lifted his head and didn't make a peep. If you've ever heard a dog try to become less of himself, that was the sound he made. "Don't go out," Lena said. "Because she knows me. I'm not," I said, because for once I meant it. We let the sound pass along the yard as if it had errands to run. It stopped under our bedroom window. We could tell by the way the quiet changed, the way everything else pressed back. I had the stupid thought to hold my breath so whoever it was couldn't hear me. That's not how breathing works, but it's how fear does. I reached for Lena's hand. We stayed like that. After a long minute, a long 10, the sound moved away across the gravel toward the eastern fence. In the morning, I checked the ground. Gravel doesn't take a print like dirt does, but you can tell when a thing has passed. The stones had pushed. Deep, long lines as if something heavy and smooth had dragged them into furrows. Not a foot, not a tire. As if a robe's hem had weight. I told Dad. He nodded like he'd been waiting. "Don't feed it," he said. "What does that mean?" "Don't look at it for too long. Don't talk to anybody about it who wants to. Make a show. Don't go to where you saw it first. And don't bring anything home." He and I stood at the western fence line and looked toward the road the way he said Granddad used to. The wind went through the milo heads and made that soft rattling music. Under it I could hear something else, or I thought I could. Not words, more like the memory of words. That Saturday, for reasons I still can't explain in a way that doesn't make me look foolish, Jess and I drove back past Stull. We didn't plan it. We were on county roads moving a salt block, and then our route took us that way and neither one of us said turn. We didn't stop. We didn't slow more than you do when you're being careful about a new pothole. The ruin sat in its space. The gate leaned. The shadows collected like always. And across the road, in the ditch, lodged in the fall-dry weeds at an angle, was a piece of limestone the size of a loaf of bread, pale and rough and ordinary. I can't tell you why that rock felt wrong, only that it did. It looked like a chunk from a wall that didn't want to be missing. I didn't get out, I didn't pick it up, I didn't have to. When we got home, tucked in the bed of the pickup, snug between the toolbox and the spare, was a pale, rough rock the size of a loaf of bread. Not the one from the ditch, I told myself. Couldn't be. But it was a twin, if not the same. Jess saw it and closed her eyes. "We didn't stop," she said. Her voice had the beginning of anger in it, not at me, but at the way a thing can choose your life without asking. Lena wouldn't let me carry it inside, not even into the shed, she said. She made me put it on the driveway where the last rain had washed the gravel clean. She said we were going to return it, but not at night, not with a flourish, not with curiosity tied to it like string. We went first thing the next morning. The world was all clean sky and school bus yellow cottonwoods and the kind of temperature that makes you forget the summer was hard. We stayed on the road. We set the rock on the shoulder across from the leaning gate, not a ceremony, not a prayer. Jess said, "There you go," like you might say to a stray cat you're trying to keep from following you home. When we got back to the house, the rock sat exactly where it had before, snug between the toolbox and the spare. Lena took one step, back from the truck, then another. I didn't have a step to take. I felt the ground go out from underneath, not in any physical way, just in the way that tells you your rules don't hold. I carried the rock to the creek and set it on the far bank. I stood up and turned to go. I didn't hear a splash or a wind through the hedge or a frog. I heard that cloth against wood sound from the night before, only smaller now, more contained, like it was coming from a closet and the door was shut. When I got to the driveway, The rock was back in the truck bed and my hands were empty. That night, the motion light went on at 12:06 and stayed on. We didn't go out. We watched the edge of brightness under the curtains like you watch a pot you don't want to boil over. The light held steady until 2:12, then snapped off. Fresh grit lay in front of the back door in the morning. I swept it up and watched how it clung to the dustpan, and that was when it occurred to me. The grit clung like it was a little damp even though the air has been dry for days. The ash smell came back so clear I could taste it. I stopped sleeping after that. Not all the way. I slept the way a sentry does, in slices with one ear on the world. Jess started driving county roads at weird hours. She said it made her feel like she was the one choosing the route instead of whatever else. Lena moved the bed to the interior wall so the window wouldn't be at our backs. She started putting jars on the porch steps. Not for anything magic, she said when I raised an eyebrow. Just so I'll hear them if they're tipped over. Late in the month, after the first real frost, the county put up a sign near stall warning trespassers they'd be ticketed. A good sign. Clear, simple. People online complained about free access to history and the right to take pictures wherever they want. People online are not the ones who get up at 5 a.m. to fix the fence some drunk kid drove through for a dare. I read the comments anyway because I'm an idiot. They made jokes. They said, "Gateway to hell, LOL." They said, "Meet there at midnight?" I put my phone in the drawer and went outside to check the barn because that felt like something I could do. The barn was colder than it had a right to be. My breath made a ghost out of me. I stood there with my hand on the latch because that was the position my body knew for that door, and in the deep corner where we keep the extra boards and a rusted-out mower deck, something tall and straight shaped itself out of the dark. Not stepped forward, not came out. Shaped itself, like condensation on a glass. I didn't open the door wider. I didn't shut it. It didn't move. It leaned a fraction like a person would if they wanted to let you know they were bored. I said in a voice I didn't recognize as mine, "You can stay if you don't come inside." That's not a sentence a sane man says to a barn. But it's what I said. The shape didn't nod because nodding suggests a face and I don't think it has one that I could look at and still know how to put one foot in front of the other. It eased, tiny bit by tiny bit, toward straight again. I shut the door with a soft click so the latch wouldn't complain. I set my back against the boards and slid down until I was sitting on my heels. I breathed. I heard nothing on the other side. No scrape, no whisper. Just a quiet so complete my bones ached. Dad came by that afternoon and caught me looking at nothing with more concentration than I look at my wife. He put his toolbox down and said, "It doesn't chase." "What does it do?" I asked. He thought about it. He has eyes that get more blue when he's about to tell a truth he'd rather not. "It waits until you remember," he said. "We never did figure out the rock. Lena told me to stop trying. If it wants to be here," she said, "it will be here. If it wants to be there, it will be there. If it wants you to know the difference, it will tell you. Do not ask for explanations from something that does not owe you one." She had steel in her. I married right. People always ask in stories like this why you don't move. That's not how it works when your whole life is tied up in a patch of ground and a line of fence and a name on a mailbox. Where would I go that wouldn't have a horizon? And anyway, I didn't feel like it would stay if I left. That's not how it felt. It felt like it had a route it liked, and we were on it now. We were a marker, like the cottonwood at the bend. Halloween, the wind blew all day. That hard, empty wind we call a good day for a kite if you don't like your kite. I spent the afternoon tightening down anything that would go airborne. Around dusk, I heard the yowl of somebody's teenage thrill ride and a screech, and then nothing. No tires, no yelling, no engine. Just the wind stepping back like a gentleman who's remembered to hold the door. We had one trick-or-treater all night, a little gallant soldier in an oversized coat escorted by a very tired mother. After they left, the motion light flicked on at 12:06 and stayed on. I walked to the window and lifted the corner of the curtain. The yard glowed that sick outdoor light color. The gravel was smooth. The porch jars sat the way Lena set them. The gate to the pasture had swung open a quarter of the way and was not moving, even though the wind should have made it do a jittery Dance? At the far edge of light near the road, something tall and dark stood where the world bends. It leaned as if in greeting. I let the curtain fall. I came back to bed. Lena squeezed my hand once, strong. The next morning, 2 jars were tipped. Over. Nothing else. It has been almost a year now. I haven't gone back to Stull. People still ask if I think it's a gateway to hell, and I say, I think it's a place where the ground is thinner than you want to believe. I don't think you have to go there for it to find you. That's the part no one likes to hear. They want rules, they want times. Only at midnight, or only on Halloween. I can tell you the clock likes to read 12:06 when it doesn't want to read anything else. And the air likes to hold its breath on nights when there should be sound. I can tell you that if you put your palm on the post at the end of the western fence, you will feel a shiver run up your arm even on a day when the yard is 65 and dull. None of those are rules. They're reminders to pay attention. The other night after we finished checking calves, Jess stood at the truck bed and said, "Do you ever wonder if we're just good at telling ourselves stories? Like if we're choosing the shape after the fact because we need a thing to wear the fear?" "Yes," I said, "but this is not that." "How do you know?" "Because I don't want it to be true." We laughed, not because anything was funny, but because it was either that or sit down in the gravel and cry. On our way back to the house, the motion light flicked even though the sensor hadn't been tripped. The chimes sang one flat note. The ash smell came with the breeze, then faded. Brisket pressed his side against my leg and shook his head like there were flies. There weren't any flies. I took a picture of the yard without thinking, maybe because I wanted to prove something to myself later. When I looked at the photo in the kitchen, the right edge of the frame was too dark. Not wrong exposure dark, but dense. A shape rose out of that density, tall and empty and exact, as if someone had cut it from the night with a careful knife. Under the peak of what a sane person would call a hood, there was a hollowness, not eyes. Just a place your attention goes the way a compass goes to north. I didn't show the picture to Lena. I deleted it. It didn't matter. The thing in the picture didn't need the picture to be here. I'm telling you this not because I think you'll believe me, but because I know some of you already saw something between rows of headstones when you were brave at an hour that makes a fool out of all of us. Some of you parked across the road and your engine hiccuped and you told yourself it was a coil. Some of you leaned on your porch rail in the blue before day and saw a tall, dark shape where your field meets the county's, watching. It doesn't chase. It doesn't run. It waits until you remember. If you do go near Stull, if your pride gets the better of you, don't get out. Don't lean on the leaning gate, because leaning is a language there and you're not fluent. Don't pick up anything that wasn't yours 10 minutes earlier. When your clock resets at 12:06, take it like the weather and go home. And if, after that, when you're walking your own fence line in the morning, you lift your head and see a tall hooded shape at the boundary between your land and the long rolling rest of Kansas, don't look too long. Don't feed it. Tip your hat without taking your eyes off the ground and walk the line like you meant to. It will lean. It may move closer the next time. Or it won't. It waits. It has all the time. I haven't seen it inside the house. Not yet. I move the bed sometimes just in case. 2 of the porch jars are always upright without my hands on them, and I don't ask who put them back. The rock in the truck bed is not there anymore, and I couldn't say when it left. Sometimes when I'm driving past the county road by Stull, in good daylight with a load of feed, I feel a weight against the tailgate like a hand resting there, casual, patient. I don't look. I keep 50. I mind the lane. When I get home, I park the truck and go check the western fence. The path is worn there now, same as it was when my granddad walked it. I put my palm on the post, and the grain of the wood prints itself in my skin. On calm days, the windbreak rattles anyway, like a robe's hem brushing old wood. On really still nights, the chimes answer a note that isn't there. Brisket sleeps under our bed now and sometimes whines with his mouth closed. The calendar turns. The fields go from brown to green to dull again, the way they always do. And every so often at the far end of the eastern fence where the world bends, something tall leans a fraction, as if to say my name without speaking. I go back to work. I pretend I didn't hear it. I pick up a wrench. I check the bolts on the gate. I go on because you have to, but I always know where it is and it always knows I know. I didn't grow up in Lynchburg. I moved there for a year when my girlfriend Maya got a travel nurse contract at the hospital. We rented a tiny upstairs apartment off 5th Street over a hair salon and a place that made biscuits the size of baseball mitts. It was winter when we settled in. Gray days, frost on the roofs by morning, and the kind of cold that clicks in old radiators. The first time I heard about Old City Cemetery was from our neighbor, a retired mailman named Henry who smoked on the stoop and always had a new story. He pointed with his cigarette toward the hill. Iron gates, crumbling tombs, roses everywhere when it's warm, and the kids. He said it like I should know already, like saying the university or the river. What kids? I asked. The ones that vanish. Don't worry, they don't belong to anyone anymore. Maya didn't love that sentence. She's practical. She hears vanish and thinks missing persons report. But Henry went on to explain the local thing people whispered about. Visitors bring flowers, sometimes toys. If you leave a toy at a child's grave, you might hear giggling before you reach the gate again. Some folks see 3 barefoot children running between the stones. In the frost, they leave no prints, and every so often the toys end up lined neatly at the foot of a Civil War soldier's grave. According to the records, the man died childless. You believe that? I asked. Henry shrugged. Believe, don't believe. You'll walk up there anyway. Everyone does. It's quiet. It gets under your skin. I didn't think much of it until a week later when our friend Caleb came down from Roanoke with his camera. He's one of those guys who likes to turn every day into a photo walk. He had a whole series planned called Small Town Winter, and Lynchburg fit the look. Old brick, church spires, empty baseball fields, a cemetery with iron gates like something out of a book. We went on a Saturday right after lunch. The sky was the color of the inside of a seashell, pale and flat. The cemetery wasn't empty. 2 joggers, a young mom pushing a stroller, a group of college kids taking pictures on the steps of a chapel-looking building. The place felt old without being spooky for the first few minutes. There were plaques with little stories, iron fences around family plots, some stones leaning like they were nodding off. I saw toy cars tucked beside small markers, a plastic dinosaur with a broken tail, a windmill that clicked lazily when the breeze picked up. A man in a green jacket and a cap, caretaker, security, I couldn't tell, waved at us from the path. He had a ring of keys hanging off his belt and the kind of smile that feels earned. Try to be out by dusk, he called. Gate likes to shut faster than the sign says when it's cold. Does it lock automatically? I asked. He tapped the keys. Eventually, but some of us still do things the old way. Maya thanked him. Caleb lifted his camera and snapped a picture. The man nodded, then added, "Whatever you leave it. Don't take toys from one stone to another. Don't pocket coins from the soldier's grave. Don't answer if you hear your name when you know no one's around." It was the way he said it. Like rules in a workshop with heavy machinery. You could laugh, but you'd be the one to lose a finger. We walked. The place had sections, smaller, and older as you went uphill. There was an area for soldiers with flags, rows of baby stones, just first names and dates that stop your breath. Maya stopped at one that read, Emma Gray, 1903-1910, and said a small rubber ball she'd been carrying. She's a sucker for kid things. She'll see a little jacket left at a playground and practically organize a search party. We didn't hear giggling. We didn't feel watched. Caleb took photos of the iron gate from the inside, the way it made the street look farther away than it was. The cold rose from the ground and got into my shoes. We were halfway back to the main path when I remembered the ball. I was about to say, "Let's go check on it," when a thin, bright sound came from somewhere to our left. A laugh, the chair scrape of a giggle, not a cackle, not a TV laugh track, the kind you get out of kids when they're trying to be quiet but can't help it. Maya squeezed my arm. "You hear that?" Caleb swung his camera around and fired off a burst quick like shutters can catch sound. We stood still. Leaves clicked overhead. Somewhere a flag rope tapped a pole. Another thin laugh darted across the path like a fish flashing under the surface. Let's go. Maya wasn't joking. We headed for the gate. At the junction, we passed a grave with a low stone wall. Lined up in front of it, tucking the base like a little parade, were 4 plastic soldiers, green, molded with rifles. They were scuffed and old, the kind you pull out of a bin at a yard sale. Caleb stopped. Did you see those earlier? I hadn't. The name on the stone was Hargrove, Nathaniel J., 1838, 1864. There was no mention of children. A small flag bent in the wind. The soldiers faced outward as if guarding the grass. We reached the gate, looked back, and the man with the keys was there again, like he'd been expecting us. He smiled without showing teeth. Quiet, isn't it? Can make you hear things. Someone left little soldiers by that Hargrove grave, I said. Sometimes they do. He touched his cap. Name's Whitlow, by the way. Oliver Whitlow. If you come back, say hi. We did come back. It's hard to explain why. Maybe it's what Henry said. The place got under our skin. It was a place for walking slow, for looking at the names and wondering if anyone alive still had those faces in their head. That night, we looked through Caleb's photos on my laptop. Most were what you'd expect: gates, stones, a cardinal in a bare bush. But there was one frame where the light made a pale blur between 2 markers, low like a person crouched, maybe fog, maybe breath. When I zoomed in, it pixelated into nothing. We went back Tuesday late afternoon with coffee and paper cups. The sky was darker and it felt like the temperature dropped 10 degrees the second we stepped through the gate. A docent in a blue coat told a couple about the roses that bloom later. We walked toward the children's section. The rubber ball was gone. It probably rolled downhill, Maya said. That would have been true if the ground sloped. But in that area, the earth was flat. A bright shape caught my eye down the path. The ball sat on the grass in front of Hargrove Nathaniel J., lined up with 6 tiny plastic soldiers now, all facing outward. Neither of us put it there. Someone's messing with people, Caleb said, but he was smiling the way you smile in a movie right before the music turns. When we turned to go, a little voice said, "Don't run." I swear to you it was right behind my left ear. That's the kind of thing you can chalk up to a memory or your own mind. But Maya heard it too. She didn't run, but she put her hand on my sleeve and we walked like people who have just noticed the floor is glass. We started bringing small things when we visited. Maya tied bright mittens to a fence where someone else had tied faded ones. She left a handful of marbles, blue and clear, in a half-buried shell. Caleb set down a pack of new green soldiers from the discount store in case the old ones were cracking. I say this because I don't want you to think we were disrespectful. We weren't there to poke the bear. We were careful. We said hello. We didn't step on the grass where the stones were tiny. We followed the path and the signs and Mr. Whitlow's rules. If this were a video, the first weird clip would be from our 3rd visit. We were walking past the row of baby stones and noticed the frost. It wasn't everywhere, just a thin skin in certain patches, even though it had warmed during the day. In one patch, the frost had been disturbed in a looping pattern, not footprints, more like someone pressed a small, cold hand and dragged it in a game of blind man's bluff. Maya knelt and touched the melted trail. When she lifted her fingers, her skin steamed like she dipped them in ice water. That night, something tapped our bedroom window. 3 taps, a pause, 3 taps. Our apartment was on the 2nd floor. Trees swayed outside. A branch, we said. It was a branch. I got up and pulled back the curtain. The window looked over a small parking lot and then the street. No ledge, nothing within easy reach. I waited. Nothing tapped. When I went back to bed, I found one of the green plastic soldiers on my pillow, molded rifle and all. I hadn't taken any from the cemetery. I don't have an explanation for that. I know how that sounds, but I didn't put it there. And neither did Maya, at least not as a joke. She was too rigid with that kind of fear that makes your shoulders stiff. We put the soldier on the kitchen counter under a coffee mug. The next day, I took the bus to the library and asked for cemetery records like I was doing a school project. The local history room had a binder with photocopies of all the stones. Hargrove, Nathaniel J. The note said, Company B, 58th Infantry, died of fever, no known issue. No issue means no children. There were clippings about the cemetery, a couple of articles from around Halloween years back, nothing dramatic. People told the same story Henry told. Leave a toy, hear a giggle, find the toy lined up at Hargrove by morning. One woman's quote stuck in my head. They giggled right behind me. Not mean, like a secret between kids. I dropped the flowers I was carrying because I realized there were no footprints anywhere. I checked out a book on Lynchburg history anyway. It didn't help. On the walk home, I saw a kid about 6 years old hop from slate to slate along someone's walkway, arms out, balancing. He looked up and grinned at me like we had a joke, but I'd never seen him before. He was gone by the time I turned at the corner. There's a reason I'm telling you this. Once we started paying attention, the kid stuff seemed to notice us, back. We went back to the cemetery at dusk because that's when routines and rules loosen, and I half expected Mr. Whitlow to shake his head at us. He did. He stood by the gate with his keys. I told you, he said, not unkind. The cold gets into things here, makes them wake up faster. It's not a problem. Unless you make it one. Are we making it one? Maya asked. Depends on how curious you are, he said. Curiosity is how people get lost. Folks usually find their way if they don't. Give their names and they don't take what isn't theirs. What about the toys? I asked. He flicked his eyes toward the hill. Those aren't theirs either. Those are for passing time. There are a lot of hours between sundown and sunup if you don't sleep like the living do. The sun was already cutting the tops of stones. We told him we'd be quick. He watched us go like a lifeguard, who knows where the deep end begins. I want you to understand that none of us were thrill seekers. Caleb wanted photos. I wanted to solve a small riddle, to see how coins and toys move in the night and decide later that someone was having fun. Maya wanted to leave mittens where small hands might be cold in case there's anything like fairness after you're gone. Normal reasons. And even then, the first minutes were ordinary. No whispers, no taps. The wind smelled like damp leaves and a little like old pennies. The marbles were where Maya left them. The mittens had slipped a bit lower, on the fence post. She adjusted them. At Hargrove's grave, the green soldiers were gone. A neat row of 3 pennies lay along the base, heads up and evenly spaced, like eyes. The rubber ball sat off to the side in the short grass. Caleb lifted his camera and took a picture of the pennies. I like the symmetry. Don't touch them, Maya said. He laughed and put his hands up like a suspect. I wasn't going to. We stayed longer than we meant to. The light went from gray to purple, and then to that thin blue that isn't a real color, just the absence of light pretending to be something. Somewhere else in the cemetery, we heard a small group talking. The docent, maybe, finishing a tour. Then quiet. That's when the giggling started up again. Once, then again closer. It came in irregular bursts like kids who can't keep a beat clapping anyway. It stopped. 3 taps sounded on the stone beside my knee. Tap, tap, tap. I don't know why I knelt. Maya's hand moved to my shoulder and stayed there. Count with us, a voice said, thin as dryer sheets. 1, 2, 3. Caleb whispered. You hear that on the left or the right? Behind, I said, though there was nothing behind us but stone and then the slope toward the gate. Don't say your names, Maya said, not loud, like she was talking in church. Nobody asked, the small voice said, polite and disappointed. Do you want to play statues? The cold rose out of the ground like fog. I could see my breath and after a few seconds something else, like the condensation that forms on glass, tracing circles in the air inches from my chest. A handprint. Small. It came and faded as if made by a cold hand pressing the air itself. Maya whispered, we can play one game, then we have to go. 3 thumps sounded, like a grown man walking in boots except the weight was wrong for the steps. They were heavy but cautious, circling. I turned my head and saw nothing. The pennies on the grave tilted a hair, rolled. A fraction of an inch, like one side of the earth had lifted. "Statues," the voice said. "When we look at you, don't move. If you move, you're out." "Out where?" Caleb asked, still trying to keep humor in it. It sounded wrong as soon as he said it. His breath came faster. "The rules. That's what I think of now. There are always rules in places like this. They're simple. That's what makes you think you can go around them. Don't say your name, don't look when you're told not to, don't take what you didn't bring, don't be last." Something brushed my coat at knee height like a child running past. The marbles in Maya's pocket clicked against one another without her hand moving. "We should go," I said. "Count to 3, the voice said again, urgent, now. "He won't come out if you don't count." The 3 pennies on the grave slid the smallest distance, aligning knife-edge straight as if that tiny movement mattered to someone. "He who?" Maya asked. Another voice, a whisper older than the others, rode the cold. It wasn't words at first, it was rhythm, a training rhythm. Present, arms. The way a leader calls, and the line responds. The steps circled once, stopping directly. Behind the stone, I could hear leather creak that wasn't there. "Nathaniel," I said without meaning to. Maya squeezed so hard I felt her nails even through my jacket. "Don't give him what he doesn't have." The giggles turned to shushing sounds like kids hushing each other in a library. A weight settled on the top of the stone, like someone sat where no one would sit. I wanted to stand up and put my back against the grave to make the whole thing solid. But I was pinned by the stupid rule of the childish game and the way the air felt heavier in a way air shouldn't. Caleb's camera clicked, mechanical and real, and that broke whatever we were holding together. The 3 pennies rolled in unison. The rubber ball bounced once. Then the iron gate down the hill gave a long metal sigh like it was moving on its own. The keys on Mr. Whitlow's belt weren't here to make the sound. That's when I realized we hadn't seen him since we entered. No docents' voices, no joggers. Just us and the darkened air pressing down like water. "Okay," I said without saying okay at all. "Here's your count, 1. The steps shifted. The pennies lifted and clinked back down, all of them now heads up. 2, Maya said, and the marbles in her pocket tapped out that number, 2 little sounds. We didn't say 3. The children did. They said it together in a way that wasn't together, layered, one high, one lower, one whispering. The steps stopped like heels clicked. That's when the door of the old receiving vault at the edge of the grounds, half-built, into the hill, stone lip, rusted iron, groaned and swung in the dark. I had walked by that door earlier and thought it was chained shut. It wasn't chained now. "Roll call," a voice breathed. Not the children. This one sounded like air leaving, a lung long after it should have stopped. It came from the vault. The kids giggled again, but not like a joke now, like kids excited to show you something. "He came out," one said, "because you counted." They tugged my coat. I didn't feel fingers, but my coat moved anyway. "Come see?" Maya shook her head. "No, not tonight." Caleb wasn't, looking at us. He was staring at the dark mouth of the vault like it was a TV he'd been waiting all week to watch. He took a step that didn't sound like a step. It sounded like a breath turning into a footfall. He took another and didn't answer when I said his name. "Hey," I said louder. "Hey, man." "Roll call," the older voice said again, and 2 of the pennies slid toward the vault door like they wanted to cross the grass. "You can't. Go in there," Maya said. We both moved to stand in front of him without standing between him and anything that might want him. "Just for a second," he said. And it wasn't really his voice anymore. It was the tone he uses when he's looking, through the viewfinder when he's not on our side of it anymore. "You don't get seconds with these things," Maya said. "That's not how they work." "Corporal," the older voice said, and my skin went hot and then cold at the same time. The word landed wrong, like the graves shifted around us to make room. Maya pulled the pack of still unopened plastic soldiers from her bag. She tore it along the seam with her teeth like a mom opening snacks for impatient kids. She set the soldiers in a line at Hargrove's stone, careful and exact, rifles forward, bases flush. "You want drill?" she said, and her voice was steady in a way that made mine get steady too. "Do your drill here, not in there." Something moved the air hard enough to brush my cheek, like someone swinging an arm to turn on their heel. The soldiers we had just lined up clicked against the stone in a tiny clatter that sounded like a salute if you wanted it to. The pennies rolled back the smallest distance and stopped. "Dismissed," Maya said. Silence. Not empty. The kind of silence that's waiting to see if you mean it. The kind where the next sound decides what happens. Behind us, the vault door groaned again. It didn't slam. It eased inward like a breath in reverse. Caleb blinked hard, staggering, like he'd stood up too fast after a long nap. He looked at Maya first, then at me, and when he saw the open door, a small sound came out of him. Honest and scared. "We're going," Maya said. She put her hand in my sleeve and her other hand on Caleb's sleeve and steered both of us like we were furniture that needed carrying. We didn't run. I don't know how we didn't. The children ran. Bare, feet slapping in a rhythm we couldn't match. No prints in the frost, laughter that wove in between the graves. They ran ahead to the gate and then back to us and then ahead again. And the whole time I didn't once see a body. Just the disturbance of air, the suggestion, the way you can feel someone pass you in a hallway without seeing them. At the gate, a shape like a man in a cap stood to the side. For a second I thought Mr. Whitlow had been there the whole time, watching, keys ready with his dry little smile. Then the shape shifted and wasn't a shape at all. It was a trick of distance and dark and me wanting something familiar to hold on to. The gate wasn't locked. It glided open, metal against metal, the inside of the sound older than the outside. The last giggle came from right behind the iron as we stepped through. "See you at 3, it said. Not a threat, not really a promise either. We didn't talk until we reached the car. Caleb put the camera on the back seat like it might bite if he held it. "You were going to walk into that vault," Maya said. Not accusing, not gentle either. "I know," he said. "I know I was." He bent forward, hands on his knees, breathing, like he'd just finished a sprint. I wasn't even thinking. He looked up. "He called me something, did you hear it?" "Corporal," I said. Caleb laughed, soft and unhappy. "I never wanted to be in charge of anything." We ate at a diner afterward, not because we were hungry, but because it was bright and there were people. The waitress called us honey and left the coffee pot on the table. By the time we paid, the cold felt like it was outside of us again. We went home, triple-checked the locks, left lights on we don't usually leave on. We didn't sleep. At 3:03 a.m., something tapped our bedroom window. 3 taps, the pause, 3 taps again. Maya and I kept our eyes open and didn't move. It came a third time. The radiator clanged right after and the sound went away like it got embarrassed. In the morning, there were 3 pennies on our kitchen table. Heads up. I don't have a way to make you believe that beyond saying it plain. We hadn't left pennies out. We don't keep change on the table. The 3 soldiers we'd put at Hargrove's grave weren't on the counter under the coffee mug anymore either. We hadn't taken those home. I'm telling you, we hadn't. And yet, there was a 4th soldier beside the pennies. The same green, plastic with the same little mold line on the base. Caleb drove back to Roanoke the next day. He texted when he got home and said he was going to back up his photos and maybe not look at them for a while. Then he sent another message 5 minutes later. "My camera roll has 3 black frames time-stamped 3:03 a.m. last night. I didn't take them. They look like pictures taken with the lens cap on." I took the pennies back to the cemetery that afternoon because it felt wrong for them to be on our table. It wasn't bright and it wasn't fully dark either when I got there. People were around. An older couple, a guy walking his dog. The gate looked like a gate again. I carried the pennies in a napkin. At Hargrove's grave, I set them carefully, along the base, heads up. I wanted to say something, but I couldn't think of what. "Sorry? Thank you?" These words don't fit. I straightened one that wasn't perfectly straight. My fingers were so cold they ached. and I had a sudden memory of a mittens display at the store where Maya had picked the brightest pair, saying, "You want kids to see them." I stepped back. The napkin fluttered and caught on the iron fence. The soldiers weren't there. Mr. Whitlow appeared then, not like a ghost, just like a man who had been doing his job 40 yards away and walked over. "Evening," he said. "Evening," I said. "We put soldiers here the other night." He nodded. "They go where they want. They keep them busy. That's all it is sometimes. Keeping busy." He looked down the slope toward the vault. His mouth went smaller. "Sometimes they try to get busier than they should. That's when people get foolish ideas." "Do people get lost?" I asked. "Sometimes," he said. "Not always the way you think. Sometimes they go home and they're fine, and they wake up at 3:03 to someone tapping a window, and they aren't concerned so much as expected." He put his hand on the gate. "You know about the records for Hargrove. No children, died young. Men like that, they end up with a lot of extra attention." He smiled and stopped smiling in the same second. "Don't tell him your name. Don't tell any of them your name. They're always listening for something to hold." "I think we already gave them enough," I said. "You gave them exactly enough," he said. "But enough isn't a number that stays still, so you be careful." We moved away from Lynchburg in the spring when Maya's contract ended. The roses were starting when we packed the car. I drove us past the cemetery one last time and didn't stop. The gates looked ordinary again. On the railing, someone had tied a knit cap in April when nobody needed knit caps anymore. It was small and yellow and swung like a bell. We've been gone months now. I don't talk about this much. People either think you're making a ghost story or think you need more sleep. But I'm writing this here because I'm seeing a pattern I can't explain away. Once a week or so, we get a small clear sign that we are remembered. A toy soldier on the TV stand, where neither of us put it. 3 taps on a window, even when we're on the first floor now, and the bushes have been cut so they can't reach. A single penny in the center of the kitchen table when we come home from work, heads up. The year turns so the 9 or the 3 lines up with the line of the wood grain. 2 nights ago, I heard giggling in the hallway, not right at the door, but as if kids were playing and accidentally got too close. I opened the door. Nothing was there. Wet, small footprints that weren't wet a second later dotted the hall carpet and vanished like breath on glass. Caleb emailed last week to say he tries to go to bed before 3 because he wakes up if he stays up past. And when he wakes at that hour, the photos on his phone shuffle themselves. He'll have his mother's birthday picture first, then a black frame, then a winter tree. He didn't tell me to come visit. He didn't ask if we wanted to go back. He included one image in the email, a shot of the iron gate from inside. Dusk purple light, and in the corner of the frame, low, there's the suggestion of a child's shoulder. I say suggestion because that's what it is. You could lay a transparency over it and say it's nothing. You could also say it's the outline of a kid running. Sometimes both are true. I don't know what the right ending to this is. I'm not here to warn you away or dare you to go. People bring flowers, people bring toys, maybe you will too. Maybe you'll hear laughing behind you and you'll think, I have never been so spooked by something that doesn't mean me harm. Maybe you'll check the ground to see if there are footprints in the frost. Maybe you'll find the toy you left in one place lined up neatly at the foot of a grave that belongs to a soldier without listed children. Maybe you'll feel a tug at your coat and hear, polite and patient, count to 3, and you'll decide on instinct whether you play or whether you make your own rule and walk calmly to the gate. If you go, do me a favor, don't say your name out loud, don't take what you didn't bring. If you feel a door opening that shouldn't open, put down whatever you have in your hands and tell them you'll play here, not there. If you hear tapping at your window later at 3:03 in the morning, it will be gentle. It may even be joyful. You don't have to answer. You can just lie very still and remember iron gates and crumbling tombs and the way a small plastic soldier feels in your palm. Cheap and light and not meant to hold anything up. And the way the toys at Old City Cemetery like to march themselves back to a grave that lists no descendants, as if someone's still counting heads to keep himself from disappearing. That's the part that keeps me up sometimes. Not the giggling or the taps. It's the idea of someone who never had children keeping a roll anyway, calling names that don't belong to him. waiting for three voices to reach the same number. I think about how quiet the world must get in a place like that after sundown. How long the hours are. How even the small kindness of a toy or a mitten or a coin can turn into a rope if you pull hard enough on it. And when I wake at 3 to the softest sound against glass, I try not to imagine bare feet on frost. I try not to think about air moving like a small hand is pressing. I keep my eyes closed, I count to 2. I never say 3.